There was evidently a high level of attention paid to the Holy Assembly. After all, it concerned their own interests. Wushuang, we were just waiting for you, everyone called out. Jian Wushuang also took his seat. He chatted leisurely with everyone. From the expressions on their faces, it was clear that they were all confident. A month passed in catching up. The Tao Assembly arrived as well. The event was held on Yuanyang Island in the Heaven Realm. To avoid suspicion, Luo, the host, had Jinling preside over it personally. When Jian Wushuang saw Jinling again, he sensed divine power from him. In fact, he had already learned from his conversations with Wuxia and others that Jinling had made a great contribution in the matter of Mieshang and was rewarded with a divine body by the Realm King. Now, he was almost like a practitioner. His divine power was also increasing. He could now be considered a universe master at the 7 tribulations level. If he could merge the origin source sea of Qishan Temple into his divine body, he would at least have the combat power of the 8th tribulation level. No wonder Jinling was always cheerful. The Tao Assembly officially began with Jinling's announcement. It was divided into qualifying matches and arena matches. The most crucial part was the Thunder Sky match. The qualifying match was essentially a screening. If one failed in the qualifying match, it could only be said they were too weak. However, the qualifying standard this time was extremely exaggerated. The Divine Desolation Tower. It had 9 levels. The Tao Lords participating in the assembly had to climb the tower within 1 day, and the fastest 100 would enter the arena matches. When this rule was announced, Jian Wushuang and the others found it a bit exaggerated. The 9-level Desolation Tower. The first level had a desolate beast of the Tier 4 Emperor. The second level had 10 of them. By the 5th level, there were 10,000. From the 6th level onwards, the desolate beasts were at the Tier Emperor level. The 7th level had 10. The 8th level had 100. The 9th level was the most terrifying, directly having a desolate beast at the Tier 6 Emperor's level. Not all Tao Lords could match the pinnacle. Without much time to think, the qualifying matches began. Jian Wushuang had confidence in his 3 disciples, knowing their abilities. This round was not difficult for them, but for others it was challenging. The Divine Tower opened. All the disciples entered their respective Divine Desolation Towers. Wanshan led the way, flashing past the first level. The second level was the same. He directly reached the 5th level in one go. But he only spent a breath on the 5th level. Then he reached the 6th level. With almost no pause, he reached the 9th level. It was only on the 9th level that Wanshan spent the time of 1 incense stick. The rest combined didn't take 1 incense stick's time. He originally thought he would be the first to come out. But when Wanshan was teleported out, he saw 3 figures. Luo's first disciple, Xie, Hu Qing's prize disciple, Golden Body Arhat, and one of Wu's was disciples, the masked Tao Lord. Among these 3, except for Xie, he hadn't paid attention to the others and didn't expect them to be faster than him. However, he hadn't used his full strength, not even the ancient change. Ji Tang, Xinjian, hurry up. He knew the strength of the 2. Passing was no problem, but he was just worried they might waste time without using their full power. A quarter hour passed, and dozens had already finished. At this moment, Ji Tang and Xinjian leisurely walked out. Seeing so many people, their faces were full of surprise. They obviously didn't expect so many to be faster than them. What? Even faster than you? Ji Tang was even more shocked when he heard Wanshan was only 4th. Even Jian Wushuang and others watching found it unbelievable. It seems this arena battle will be very exciting, because the Tao Lords had the combat power of the pinnacle. This would definitely be an exceptionally rare competition. Disciples taught by 18 super beings, and they were all personally taught disciples, truly unprecedented. The 9-level Desolation Tower quickly screened out the top 100. All the personal disciples who participated in the Tao meeting actually had the ability to pass. It was just a matter of time. Some were particularly unlucky, hiding some of their strength, thus being just a little slower. When they walked out of the desolate tower, their auras had changed. Wuxia, who was sitting on the spectator platform, was no different. He had the most disciples and often told them to be low-key in conduct but high-profile in actions. This time it seemed he had failed in teaching conduct. Actually, the top 100, even without hiding their strength, were the strongest. So the arena competition began as usual, based on drawing lots. The first round had 50 battles. The second round had 25 battles. In the third round, there were buys with only 12 battles. In the fourth round, there were also buys depending on who had better luck, entering the top 10 by luck. This was deliberately arranged by Jinling. Luck also represented strength. However, the personal disciples who could enter the top 100 did not deign to rely on buys. The draw for the first round was concluded. The 3 disciples of Jian Wushuang drew strong opponents. Moreover, they were all Wu's disciples. There was no choice. Even after so many of his disciples were eliminated, Wu's still had more than 30 disciples entering the top 100. Each had supreme combat power. But even within supreme combat power, there were strengths and weaknesses. 50 battles began simultaneously. This was the top-notch showdown. The duration of the battles was not resolved in one move. Some even lasted several hours before a victor was determined. The losing side was only a move short. Even Ji Tang and Xin Jian won with great difficulty. However, these two did not use the ultimate skills taught by Jian Wushuang. Only Wan Shan, from the beginning, displayed the ancient transformation and directly crushed his opponent. Ancient transformation. Seeing this familiar name, Hu Qing turned and said, "This should be the improved version of the eternal transformation." Jian Wushuang did not hide it and said calmly, "Pretty much. It's a divine power ultimate skill more suitable for Tao Lords. With this ultimate skill, it shouldn't be much of a problem for Wan Shan to enter the top 10 this time." Everyone was generous with their praise. A disciple trained by Jian Wushuang being able to enter the top 10 was normal. No way around it, the master himself was a freak. The records created by the Tao Lord had not been broken by anyone to this day. Few even came close. Only Wan Shan, Xiayu, and others could approach the brilliance left by Jian Wushuang. Let's wait and see. Jian Wushuang did not find Wan Shan's performance impressive. Compared to the trial, Wan Shan's suppression power had decreased significantly. During the trial, he completely crushed his way to first place. It would be embarrassing if he couldn't take first place after becoming his disciple. And it would be Jian Wushuang's embarrassment. The first round of arena battles ended quickly. The second round began soon after. There was not much delay. The origin source and divine power consumed by the Tao Lords could be quickly recovered. Continuous fighting was also to maintain their form. The draw for the second round was unfavorable for Jian Wushuang. Among his 3 disciples, 2 drew seed contestants. Ji Yi from the Ji family drew Ji Tang. Wanyan Lai from the Wanyan family drew Xin Jian. Only Wan Shan's opponent was unknown but equally strong. In the second round, if one was not careful, it was very likely that 2 would be directly eliminated. Ji Yi was Luo's disciple and also used a sword. Moreover, her swordsmanship had already reached the 5th layer, at the edge of the Tao merge. If it weren't for participating in the Tao assembly, she could have completely unified with the Tao. Ji Tang, you have the blood of the Ji family in you. Even if you don't acknowledge it, you can't change it. Over the years, people from the Ji family had also sought out Ji Tang. Jian Wushuang did not intervene, but Ji Tang did not waver in her Tao heart. If her master had not taken her away from the Ji family back then, she wouldn't have lived long, let alone achieved what she had today. Everything she had now was unrelated to the Ji family. If there was any connection, it was hatred. Her mother had died in the Ji family. This debt would be settled sooner or later. The Ji family did not know about this relationship and thought that Ji Tang looked down on the Ji family after she had attached herself to Jian Wushuang. So they kept trying to win her over. You will never understand the enmity between me and the Ji family. An era's time had allowed Ji Tang to grow a lot. She was not a lunatic buried in hatred. She could distinguish who was an enemy and who was innocent. Ji Yi was of the same clan as her, but there was no affection or enmity between them. There was no need to argue with a clan's favored young master about how the Ji family was. What she needed to do was defeat her opponent and bring honor to her sect. That was enough. Clang. A cold gleam flashed, and the sword light was sharp and domineering. With the first strike, she unleashed the Star Lake Sword Intent. A massive lake spread out from the sword's shadow, enveloping Ji Yi completely. I don't understand your enmity with the Ji family, but can I not understand swordsmanship? Ji Ye's sword broke through the enemy, and his Luo Shui sword intent had also reached a high level. With just a few strikes, he broke the Star Lake sword intent. For him, this was far from enough. On the platform, the duel between the two Ji family prodigies drew exclamations from the universe masters watching. They all envied that the Ji family had produced 3 direct disciples. The future prospects were limitless. They were definitely not ordinary individuals. This battle was actually a loss for the Ji family, because both Ji Yi and Ji Tang's strength were enough to enter the top 20. Now, however, they had to determine a winner. Besides Ji Tang, Xinjian was also in a deadlock. Wan Shan had already finished his match. Although the opponent's direct disciple was not very powerful, having strength at the threshold of the pinnacle, he was still far inferior to Wan Shan. Wan Shan, using the ancient transformation technique, had already reached pinnacle combat strength. He easily crushed his opponent, displaying the same dominance he had in the trials. All 25 matches had concluded. Only Xinjian and Ji Tang were still struggling on the platform. Currently, neither of them was in a good state. Ji Tang was being severely suppressed by Ji Yi, and Xinjian was not faring any better. But just at the moment of determining the winner, a vast ocean descended from the sky. Star Sea Sword Intent. Both of them unleashed it simultaneously. With just one strike, they turned the tide of the battle. Xinjian wins. Ji Tang wins. Many people did not react. Clearly, they were about to lose, yet they made a comeback. Ji Yi was even more unable to accept it. She couldn't accept losing to a girl from the Jian family who had been wandering outside. Clearly about to win, she was defeated by a single sword strike. I actually lost. Ji Yi took half a step back, standing under the arena, unable to calm down for a long time. Jian Tang sheathed her sword and slowly walked to the edge of the arena, speaking with a determined tone. You don't understand grievances, nor do you understand the way of the sword. After leaving this remark, she left straight away and walked into the group of winners. Not understanding grievances was normal, just like how Ji Yi didn't understand why Jian Tang didn't return to the family. She hadn't experienced the suffering of others yet demanded that they be the same as her. It was indeed somewhat ridiculous. Not understanding the way of the sword was even more evident. The sword intent just now had reached the pinnacle of supreme combat power. That sword move was by no means comparable to Star Lake. No matter how many lakes there were, they couldn't converge into a sea. Even the smallest sea was still a sea. The Star River Lake Sea. Once thoroughly understood, one would be an invincible emperor, no longer comparable to a Tao Lord. Seeing his 2 disciples breaking through one after another and winning the competition, Jian Wushuang felt very gratified. He didn't say anything, just nodded. This was enough for the disciples to feel the true intent. Wan Shan's performance was also good, but the divine power route was not so complicated, nor did it have the possibility of such a comeback. Everything was a gradual performance. The 3rd round draw now begins. Finally, it was time for the 3rd round of the competition. This time, the top 10 would be decided. A bye meant direct entry into the top 10. Among the 12 winners, there would be an additional match to determine 2 losers. Now only 25 people were left. In the spectator stands, someone had already closed their eyes. Wu Tian closed his eyes. His disciple hadn't even made it into the top 25. As for Wan Yen, he was the same. Of the disciples who entered the top 100, only one remained, and in the 2nd round, he drew Wan Shan. He was unlucky. Some were disappointed while others were happy. Gu Qianluo's only remaining disciple, Duobao Taoist, drew a bye, lying down to enter the top 10, becoming the first trialist to enter the top 10 in this Tao assembly. Luck! Gu Qianluo laughed proudly. Zhenling said it right. Luck is also a part of strength. My disciple's strength doesn't even rank in the top 10 among peers. Yet he made it through the first 2 rounds and drew a bye. This is an internal competition. If it were an external fight, he would have fallen long ago. Don't be so smug. Several universe masters at the 7th tribulation stage, who had lost hope, looked very embarrassed at this time. Gu Qianluo, however, deliberately showed off at this moment, naturally inciting everyone's attack. Jealousy, you're all jealous of me. Zhenling coughed and paused before saying, enough talking. The 3rd round begins now. The top 10 will be decided soon. Among the current 24 Dao Lords, Jian Wushuang alone accounted for 3. Wu Zhuo also accounted for 3. Hu Qing had 1, who was the Golden Body Arhat. Shang had only 1 left. Luo was the same. The rest were either completely wiped out or had only 1 left. This battle was decisive. All were personally directing their disciples, pointing out their opponent's weaknesses. Once they lost, their future days would be difficult. Now, the resources in the lower-level timespace had all been developed. To make up for the deficits of Qishan Temple, they needed to fight in the mid-level spacetimes or upper-level spacetimes against peers. Many understood Jian Wushuang's intention. Those suitable for teaching disciples could stay and teach. Those who were not suitable would go out and explore. They needed to leave their comfort zone. Now Qishan Temple was constantly expanding and needed to let off some steam. They needed to send a group of strong people to the mid-level or upper-level spacetimes. They needed to establish Qishan Temple's reputation in advance. Otherwise, when the barrier disappeared, Qishan Temple's overall strength would still be insufficient. At that time, Jian Wushuang would have to step in again. He could protect them for a moment but not for a lifetime. He could only use this method to change Qishan Temple. The 3rd round of battles began soon after. This time, the draw was favorable for Jian Wushuang's 3 disciples. Wan Shan was sure to win. Ji Tang and Xin Jian, using the Star Sea Sword intent, also won their matches. They thoroughly entered the previous life. The 2 who took the longest time, even if they won, would not make it into the top 10. After the first 10 matches ended, the last 2 arenas automatically declared forfeits. Thus, the 10 candidates emerged. All 3 of Jian Wushuang's disciples made it into the top 10, and they won beautifully. Then there was Hu Qing's Golden Body Arhat and Luo's Xiaoyu. The remaining 5 were Duobao Daoist, Ji Hao from the Ji family, and Gong Ping from the Gong family. The last 2 were from sects and rogue cultivators captured by Zhenling. 10 candidates were selected. Wu Zhuo was the most embarrassed. All 3 of his remaining disciples were defeated. This time, only 6 people survived. Jian Wushuang took up 3 spots. Luo took 2. Then there was Gu Qianluo along with Shang, Hu Qing, and the Lord Guangying. The rest were unlucky and would have tough days ahead. Especially Wu Zhuo, who owed a large amount of treasures to Tiansong Palace. When he went to the upstream time and space again, he would surely be pursued for debt. 18 superpowers had to leave 12 people this time. The internal pressure in Qishan Temple eased significantly. Moreover, a large number of treasures would flow in. The foundation would become increasingly strong. The 4th round of battles lost its original purpose, leaving only the strongest duels. After 5 matches, Xin Jian and Ji Tang were defeated. Wan Shan entered the top 5. Bon Qianluo's disciple, the treasure-seizing Taoist, narrowly won again with a peculiar magic weapon. In the 5th round draw, he once again showcased his extraordinary luck, getting a bye. This time, Wan Shan faced a strong opponent, Hu Qing's personal disciple, the Golden Body Arhat. Finally, he used the ancient transformation to defeat his opponent. Wan Shan, who used the ancient transformation, was approaching the level of the legendary Jian Wushuang back then. If he could master the ancient transformation, he might reach comparable heights. The final top 3 duels. Wan Shan versus Xiaoyu, the 2 fought to a draw. Duobao Daoist, with luck, took the first place. This ended the relatively serious competition. The Dao assembly ended. Jian Wushuang gathered with everyone for a while, then announced his plan to go into seclusion. This time, the seclusion would be very long. He would either reach the 8 Tribulation Realm upon emerging, or Danbao would elevate the life level of the northern spacetime, allowing the birth of the ninth tribulation realm. Otherwise, he would not come out. This determination made Wuxia and others take a deep breath. Even if they ventured out, they would stop cultivating. Otherwise, they would fall too far behind Jian Wushuang. After saying goodbye, Jian Wushuang left Qishan Temple with his 3 disciples. He also told his 3 disciples about his seclusion, as there was nothing to hide about this matter. In the span of an era as their master, he had naturally taught everything he needed to. Living and conducting oneself, and most importantly, the inheritance. Now, it was time for them to face the mundane world. At the edge of the primitive universe, Jian Wushuang brought his 3 disciples into an ordinary secret realm and set up a thatched hut, leaving Babata there. He instructed the 3 disciples that if they had any important matters in the future, they could come here to find him. Of course, his true self could not stay here. He would have Babata guard this place, and Babata would inform him of any issues. Wan Shan, you are following the divine power route. Remember, the most important thing is not treasures that enhance divine power, but methods to amplify it. Accumulating divine power is something anyone can do, but amplifying it is not something everyone can achieve. Before parting, he still worried that Wan Shan would not be able to resist the temptation of using family treasures to enhance his divine power, disrupting his own path. To this end, he also instructed the Wan family not to easily enhance Wan Shan's divine power. At the Tao Lord level, a base divine power of 50,000 was sufficient. The rest was about how to amplify one's divine power. Cultivate the ancient transformation and eternal transformation. At the Emperor level, maintain a divine power of 100,000. Comprehend even more powerful eternal transformations. Once reaching the Universe Master level, there would be no such constraints. By that time, the disciple should understand his master's good intentions. Master! Wan Shan's face was resolute as he respectfully said, Disciple will definitely remember. The eternal transformation and super-eternal transformation had also been passed on to him. The future path would be his own. After giving instructions to Wan Shan, Jian Wushuang looked at Jitang and Xinjian. These 2 inherited his swordsmanship, which was the most difficult. Moreover, the enhancement of their origin source was very slow, and they would enter a period of silence. As your master, I have left you 3 chronicles, divided into the universe, space-time, and starry sky. Do your best. The Universe Chronicle is also good, and the complete 5 sword moves are enough to be stand proud in the northern space-time. There is no need to pursue the extreme. Once you reach the Universe Master level, you can also graduate and pass on these inheritances for me. Pass them on. Jian Wushuang had naturally left, intending to teach some disciples. But he didn't have the time to do so, so he entrusted his 3 disciples. All right, I should go into seclusion now. If there is anything in the future, you can tell Babata, and he will inform me. You can also share your thoughts with him. After explaining everything, Jian Wushuang turned and walked into the thatched hut. The 3 disciples bowed deeply and did not rise for a long time. Wan Shan took a deep breath, knowing that the road ahead depended on him, and said, Senior brother, senior sister, do you have any places to go? The 2 shook their heads. A magnificent path of cultivation would also unfold for the 3 of them. As for Jian Wushuang, after entering the thatched hut, he left behind only an avatar clone. His true self had already drifted away. He didn't care about the retreat places in the downstream spacetimes, so he chose to retreat in his origin source starry sky. His true self went to the end of the universe to experience desolation and calm his mind. A million eras of stagnation, without battle, without cultivation. It was time to cultivate properly. Buzz! On Tianqing Mountain, Jian Wushuang clenched his fist and burst with energy, his divine power directly reaching 30 million. This was also the current limit of the world. His base divine power was 8 million, plus the 2 million from the tribulation armor, making a total of 10 million. There was nothing more to improve. Anyway, he didn't need to fight now. Enhancement was something to consider after the 8th tribulation realm. The divine power secret technique, super eternal ancient transformation, had reached a perfect level. Ordinary super-eternal ancient transformation only amplified divine power by 1 time. Perfect super-eternal ancient transformation could amplify it by 2 times. The prerequisite was the environment, and the foundation of one's divine power. Sometimes, perfect super-eternal ancient transformation could not amplify by 2 times. He still needed to make some adjustments. The troublesome part of the divine power route was the amplification secret technique. This was the most time-consuming, enhancing not the realm but the combat power. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged in the starry sky, continuously improving the super-eternal ancient transformation in his mind, in pursuit of achieving the most perfect form. Time flew by like a white colt passing through a gap, and one seclusion lasted for 100,000 epochs. Many things happened during this period. Babada not only informed him about the matters concerning his 3 disciples, but also collected some information about Qixin Temple. He even gathered a lot of information about the middle stream and upstream spacetimes. These 100,000 epochs were not only a transformation for the lower stream spacetimes but also for the entire northern spacetime. The resurrection secret technique had enhanced the overall strength of the northern spacetime by several folds. After all, the scattered tribulation was much more numerous than the universe masters. Once these scattered tribulations were reborn, their strength quickly caught up to the universe masters. However, some unlucky ones failed their tribulation, leading to their complete demise, and such cases couldn't be resurrected. Overall, undergoing tribulation carried significant risks. Failure was permissible, but if one fell during the tribulation, no one could be blamed. Moreover, for the resurrected universe masters, undergoing tribulation was several times more difficult than for the normal universe masters. Each failure would multiply the difficulty several times. This continued until their ultimate demise. Despite this, those scattered tribulations were still very happy to have this opportunity. Back when Jian Wushuang befriended the divine craftsman Lianxing in the ancient moon spacetime, Lianxing had now become an 8th tribulation realm universe master. His foundation was very deep. Even as a scattered tribulation, he possessed the combat strength not weaker than that of a universe master. Now, he had leaped to become an 8th tribulation universe master. Such occurrences happened many times in the northern spacetime. The number of 8th tribulation universe masters increased several times. Those 8th tribulation scattered tribulations also gained the most benefits from this resurrection secret technique. They began preparing for the 9th tribulation. However, this time no one dared to undergo the 9th tribulation voluntarily. They all waited for the God of Life to elevate their life level. The 3 ancient beings were no exception. Jian Wushuang himself was not in a hurry. He was currently only at the 7th tribulation realm. Apart from some major events in the northern spacetime, Qixin Temple also underwent significant changes. The number of 7th tribulation realm cultivators kept increasing, but the 8th tribulation still had only Hu Qing. The number of 6th tribulation realms was also quite impressive. The newly ascended universe masters were 10 times more than before. Currently, the downstream spacetimes had 10,000 universe masters. Although it was still not as many as the universe masters of the ancient moon spacetime, with time, they would eventually surpass the ancient moon spacetime. As for surpassing the entire upper stream spacetimes, that was impossible, because the resources of the upper stream spacetimes were beyond comparison to the lower stream spacetimes. The resources of the ancient moon spacetime alone surpassed those of the entire lower stream spacetimes. If it weren't for some 7th tribulation experts led by Wu Zhuo fighting for resources outside, Qixin Temple's development would have long reached its end. They needed to compete for resources now. In the future, they would need to compete for territory. Survival of the fittest. The weak would enter the lower and even the bottom ranks. The strong would gather at the top ranks. The northern starry sky would also reverse the heavens and earth. At present, they were just waiting for the opportunity for a barrier to disappear. Even if the barrier didn't disappear, Qixin Temple already had a large number of strong experts beginning their advance into the middle-rank starry sky. Moreover, they had already taken over a middle-rank starry sky. Currently, a large number of strong experts from Qixin Temple were migrating. His 3 disciples had also left the lower-rank starry sky. In the span of 100,000 eras, his 3 disciples had all reached the level of universe masters. Wan Shan didn't need to improve his realm much. He could completely rely on his strength to withstand tribulations. He was now a universe master at the 5th tribulation level. Moreover, his divine power had already surpassed 1,000,000. He was a prodigy of the current Qixin temple. Although Jitang and Xinjian were somewhat slower, their strength was not inferior. Among them, Jitang's performance was more outstanding. This was something Jian Wushuang had anticipated. After reaching the universe master level, Jitang went to the Ji family to understand their grievances, and his strength advanced rapidly again. He directly mastered the Spacetime Chronicles. He caught up with Xinjian's pace. Both of them mastered the Spacetime Chronicles. As for the Starry Sky Chronicles, it was originally left as a notion by Jian Wushuang. The things he said back then were to prevent the 2 disciples from forcibly cultivating the Starry Sky Chronicles, which would only result in getting stuck and unable to advance. From their performance, it seemed he had overthought it. Before Wan Shan and the others left, they each took on several disciples to continue the legacy. But those things had nothing to do with Jian Wushuang anymore. This time he stopped cultivating for 100,000 eras only because the super-eternal ancient transformation had reached a perfect level. In the future, when he used the super-eternal ancient transformation, it would not weaken due to his own divine power being too strong. However, the current amplification was greatly reduced. Jian Wushuang considered it a compromise he made for himself. Originally, he pursued the extreme in divine power. In the end, he let go of the extreme improvement. A perfect super-eternal ancient transformation would double his divine power. An ordinary super-eternal ancient transformation would only increase divine power by 50%. For example, his current divine power was 10 million. When he fully utilized the super-eternal ancient transformation, his divine power would increase to 20 million. It seemed much weaker than before. But when his divine power reached 20 million, the fully utilized super-eternal ancient transformation would be 40 million in divine power. Before the modification, when his basic divine power reached 20 million, the super-eternal ancient transformation might not even double it. The current super-eternal ancient transformation had a larger scale. This was the change he spent 100,000 eras on. When he reached the 8th tribulation level, his basic divine power could reach 20 million. By then, using the fully utilized super-eternal ancient transformation would be 40 million in divine power. Adding the origin source Tao arena, his divine power would surpass the 9th tribulation level. With such divine power, he had the confidence to go to the realm god continent. In the coming time, he needed to enhance his origin source Starry Sky. Currently, he was short of 1 enlightenment and the expansion of his origin source Starry Sky to reach the 8th tribulation level. 9 super-perfect universes were his goal. He wouldn't undergo tribulation until he reached it. Lighting up 2 universes was simple, but connecting 9 universes into a line was difficult. It was harder than starting his cultivation anew. First, he needed to connect all things in the 9 universes. Different spaces were manageable, but time had to be equivalent. Otherwise, how could they be connected into a spacetime? This required a lot of time. Sitting and cultivating in solitude. Loneliness and anxiety entangled him. Jian Wushuang had no choice but to rest once every 10,000 eras of cultivation. To get into the state as much as possible, he didn't hesitate to split his origin source and fight himself. He pursued the purity of the origin source. Time in cultivation passed the fastest. The first 1,000,000 eras passed quickly. The major events outside were also relayed to his mind one by one. The second 8th tribulation universe master of Qixin Temple had emerged. After such a long time, the emergence of a second 8th tribulation universe master was normal. However, the one who emerged as an 8th tribulation universe master surprised Jian Wushuang. Gu Qianluo, the 10th divine lord of Qixin Temple. Jian Wushuang never expected that the extremely jealous Gu Qianluo would become an 8th tribulation universe master. He was the second one after Hu Qing. He was also the second one from Qixin Temple. Just 60,000 eras ago, he successfully passed the tribulation. It was said that the reason for this smooth tribulation was because of his disciple. At that time, even Jian Wushuang felt that the Duobao Taoist had immense fortune. This disciple of Gu Qianluo had obtained a wisp of strange power rising from the abyss in the middle-tier spacetime. Unable to understand it himself, he presented it to Gu Qianluo. Initially, Gu Qianluo couldn't comprehend it either. Later, after mastering it, he merely absorbed that wisp of strange power, which caused his divine power to soar by 10 million. Taking advantage of this, he passed the 8th tribulation. His disciple, who also absorbed a portion, became a 7th tribulation universe master. For a time, they overshadowed Wanshan. Currently, Wanshan was just a 6th tribulation universe master, and his progress had slowed down in recent years. Now, the most renowned figures in Qixin Temple were Gu Qianluo and his disciple. After becoming an 8th tribulation master, Gu Qianluo's peak divine power exceeded 15 million, and he seized 3 spacetime territories in the middle-tier spacetime. This provoked the Abyssal Lord's wrath, and if it weren't for Hu Qing's intervention, a war would have erupted. Hu Qing intervened and easily dealt with the Abyssal Lord. In the lower-tier spacetime, there was now a desire to overthrow the higher tiers, and everyone could see this trend. Even if Gu Qianluo did not make a move, someone would have willingly joined Qixin Temple. The pressure Qixin Temple exerted on the middle-tier spacetime was immense. In a million eras, many powerful beings had emerged, rushing to the middle-tier spacetime. Hu Qing, with his peak battle strength, could suppress the entire middle-tier spacetime alone. There were also many top-tier forces. Unable to win in battle, the middle-tier spacetime had thoughts of giving up. Especially Immortal Lord Zhuyang from the giant peak spacetime, who, before leaving the northern spacetime, handed over the second most powerful giant peak spacetime to Hu Qing. The entire middle-tier spacetime had lost its sharpness. The Abyssal Lord only dared to be so bold because he hadn't seen Jian Wushuang. If Jian Wushuang went to the middle-tier spacetime again, they would indeed collectively surrender. Although Qixin Temple threatened the safety of the middle-tier spacetime, it also brought them hope. In the future, without barriers, joining Qixin Temple early would allow them to advance to the upper-tier spacetime. Why not? There was no hope in resisting anyway. The competition in the upper-tier spacetime was even more intense. A large number of powerful beings suddenly emerged, naturally vying for treasures and opportunities. It had long since turned into a fierce battle. The Realm King was pleased with this. It was much better than a stagnant situation. Moreover, he had extracted many time-space secret realms from the Realm God continent and placed them in the upper-tier spacetime. As for the middle and lower tiers, there was no indication. Even if Wuxia caused a commotion, it was the same. Either compete in the upper-tier spacetime or go hungry. He would not favor any faction. He could bestow treasures upon individuals but would never encompass their factions. Even if Qixin Temple had made great contributions, it was the same. Jian Wushuang admired this point. Upstream was upstream and downstream was downstream. Once the barrier was removed, there wouldn't be so many issues, and by then, everyone would rely on their own abilities. Jian Wushuang began the next phase of his cultivation. At present, he had already lit up the 9th universe. The treasures he consumed were almost exhausted. Fortunately, when everything was connected, he didn't need to use any more primordial stones. Otherwise, the primordial stones he had accumulated over the years would not have been enough. In the future, when he underwent tribulation, he would also need to venture out into the world. He would search for treasures to undergo the 8th tribulation. But that was for later. He had no clue how to connect the 9 universes into one line. He was stuck on the aspect of time. An endless amount of time. He was completely immersed in his cultivation, not pausing at all. He didn't even feel the passage of time. He sat motionless in the spacetime. One session lasted 9 million eras. Outside, the snow melted and withered trees were reborn countless times. But Jian Wushuang remained unchanged. He sat stiffly in the spacetime. Behind him, the 9 great universes shone brightly, with countless threads of time converging into one. The prototype of time and space was gradually forming. To condense time and space, he had to cultivate time to perfection. Now, Jian Wushuang had finally achieved it. This was completely different from divine power. Do not be misled by the current cultivators who, after reaching the 8th tribulation's realm, continued to blindly pursue divine power, focusing on strength and ignoring realms. When they reached the 9th tribulation realm and became demigods, to take another step and become universe masters, they had to make up for everything. Jian Wushuang had to take a different path. His perfect universe could rival a universe master. As long as he mastered one universe, he could actually challenge to become a universe master. But he was different. Cultivators could at most become universe masters, but he insisted on becoming a god of time and space or even a god of spacetime. Not a bestowed god of spacetime, but one who became a god of spacetime through his own cultivation. The position of a god was inherently elusive. Mieshang was a god of spacetime. Didn't he eventually fall? The so-called gods were just like that. Jian Wushuang in the past had already slain gods. He had long since torn away that mysterious veil. A god was not completely invincible. It was just that one's vision wasn't high enough and one's strength wasn't strong enough, using it as an excuse. Becoming a god was not the goal. The goal was to defeat them. Clap. Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes. A brilliant light shot out, which was his incredibly powerful origin source. Crack. As he slowly stood up, a series of bone-cracking sounds came from his body. Only when he was fully upright did the sounds cease. Babata. The first thing Jian Wushuang did upon exiting seclusion was call for Babata. Swoosh. A small dark red demon appeared in front of him. They hadn't seen each other for millions of eras, and Babata's strength had significantly improved. However, he wasn't suited for cultivation, much like Babidi. But wisdom was also a form of strength. Master, you have finally come out of seclusion. 3,000 eras ago, the Realm King completely broke the barrier. Now, the Northern Spacetime can give birth to 9th Tribulation Universe Masters. This news didn't surprise Jian Wushuang. It was something normal. If the universe could give birth to Universe Masters, he might be surprised. By the way, the 3 ancient beings in the upstream spacetimes successfully underwent tribulation and reached the level of 9th tribulation. After countless years of accumulation, I estimate that they already have the peak strength of the 9th tribulation's realm. Now, they have all left the northern spacetime and gone to the Realm King continent. Before leaving, Elder Tiansong entrusted Wanshan to tell you that the northern spacetime has now entered a period of expansion. Cultivators with divine power exceeding 30 million must leave, otherwise, they will affect the development of the northern spacetime. Babata said a lot in one breath, and Jian Wushuang absorbed it all. Divine power exceeding 30 million? His current divine power was only 10 million. With a normal state of 10 million divine power, there was no burden on the northern spacetime. This calculation was for basic divine power. Since the 3 ancient existences had all left the northern spacetime, it indicated that their basic divine power had already exceeded 30 million. Then they indeed should have left. 30 million? Jian Wushuang murmured, clenching his fists and shouting in anger. Ha! A powerful aura surged into the sky, directly sending Babata flying away. In the origin source starry sky, divine power could receive the greatest amplification. And it was an automatic amplification. After all, it was in his own Dao arena. Buzz! A blue aura appeared, and Jian Wushuang's divine power skyrocketed from 10 million directly to 20 million. Now, the origin source starry sky was equivalent to having a miniature river of time and space enhancing his divine body. The amplification of divine power also reached as high as double. 20 million divine power doubled again to become 40 million. The powerful divine power in his origin source starry sky was like a fish in water, without any sense of strain. But if he left the origin source universe, suppression would likely occur. Although the life levels in the northern spacetime had significantly improved, could now maintain 50 million divine power. However, the number of cultivators had also increased. Surpassing 30 million divine power occupied too much space. For the younger generation to grow, they needed to take the initiative to leave. It wasn't that they couldn't sustain more than 30 million divine power. The divine power returned to its normal state, and he didn't need to maintain the super-ancient transformation all the time. In the northern spacetime, it naturally wouldn't affect anyone. However, it was time to come out of seclusion. The barrier disappeared, and he needed to implement his plan to lead Xianxia Temple to impact the upstream time and space. Swoosh! His consciousness pulled back from the origin source starry sky to reality. At this moment, Jian Wushuang was sitting cross-legged at the edge of the abyss in the end space. He slowly stood up, glanced down at the abyss, and then looked up at the starry sky. Buzz! With one step, he directly arrived at the original universe. He hadn't appeared for tens of millions of epochs. The Xianxia Temple had undergone earth-shattering changes. There were now very few who knew of him, the first divine lord. During the first million epochs of Jian Wushuang's seclusion, Gu Qianluo had become an 8th Tribulation Universe Master. In the following 9 million epochs, Wu Tian and Wu Zhu had successively become 8th Tribulation Universe Masters. Even Shang and Luo had also reached the same level. Dongsheng and Wanyan had average talents and were currently stuck at the half-step 8th Tribulation realm. Among the younger generation, however, quite a few 8th Tribulation Universe Masters had emerged. Among them was Gong Ming, the son left behind by Gong Miaoi, and Xianxia, whom Jian Wushuang had saved back then. And there were many more. At present, Xianxia Temple had 10 8th Tribulation Universe Masters. It seemed like a lot, but compared to the middle-tier spacetime, it was still lacking. However, half of the territory in the middle-tier spacetime was now occupied by Xianxia Temple. Currently, in the lower-tier Xianxia Temple, only Zhenling was stationed. Jian Wushuang tore through space effortlessly and entered Xianxia Temple, heading straight for the Sea of Origin Source. He soon sensed Zhenling's presence. He was also at the 8th Tribulation realm. Moreover, the Sea of Origin Source of Xianxia Temple had completely merged with Zhenling. Despite not having an origin universe, within Xianxia Temple, Zhenling could unleash 20 million units of divine power. Jian Wushuang. On the peak of Henggu Mountain, Zhenling rose to face the first divine lord who hadn't appeared for countless millennia and said excitedly, "You've finally come out of seclusion. If you stayed in any longer, I was going to come find you." It had been too long of a silence. So much so that many had never seen Jian Wushuang. He hadn't even left his avatar on Henggu Mountain. So many new Th7 Tribulation and even 8th Tribulation Masters had never seen Jian Wushuang. And Jian Wushuang's prestige had been gradually declining. Now, it was not even as good as the 3 disciples he had left behind. Xin Jian and Ji Tang had both reached the 7th Tribulation realm and had become Dao companions, forming the second strongest Dao companion combination in Xianxia Temple. The first, of course, was Shang and Luo. This seclusion was of great importance and indeed took a lot of time. "Thank you for your hard work during this period, Lord Zhenling." It was he who had suggested the changes, but then he went into seclusion, leaving everything behind. He felt somewhat guilty. Zhenling smiled and said, "I don't mean that. It's just that you were in seclusion for so long that many have forgotten the first Divine Lord. It's time for you to go out and shake the 4 corners." This was exactly what Jian Wushuang had in mind. It was indeed time to go out and intimidate the various realms, and simultaneously lead Xianxia Temple to charge towards the upper tier. Before he went into seclusion, he had instructed Babata to collect information on the upper tier spacetimes, finding the weakest spacetime to establish a foothold. There were 9 major upper-tier spacetimes. Originally, the ancient moon spacetime was the weakest, but with the celestial maiden relinquishing the origin source, the ancient moon sect had become a force comparable to the 3 eternal beings. The weakest spacetime had become the fallen soul spacetime. This spacetime had once been decent, having given birth to a god of death. But after losing contact with the god of death, the fallen soul spacetime had completely declined. Even though 100 schools of thought contended now, it was still a stagnant pool. If Xianxia Temple hadn't threatened the abyss spacetime, the Abyssal Lord would have led his people to flatten the fallen soul spacetime long ago. Now, it was a great gift to Jian Wushuang. He just happened to be short of treasures needed for tribulation crossing. So, he would go to the fallen soul spacetime to take a look. If they were reasonable, then perhaps they could join the middle-tier spacetime, leaving them with a decent territory. If they were unreasonable, then there was no need for words. He would act directly. The law of the jungle, played out every day. If you didn't fight for it, others would. "I'll handle this matter," Jinling asked. "You alone? Isn't sending too many people to such a task just bullying?" Jian Wushuang smiled wryly. "Though the strong are respected, one must not go too far. If it can be done peacefully, it's better to keep a low profile. I've heard that the 8th Tribulation Masters in the upper-tier spacetime are like locusts. Being too high profile, even if we take down the Fallen Soul spacetime, it won't be easy to defend." His power alone was indeed strong. But to defend a spacetime, more super-strong individuals were needed. Otherwise, others might obey you on the surface but defy you in secret, trapping your forces. You couldn't just fight your way through every obstacle. Sometimes, in the world of the strong, it wasn't all about fighting. It was about human relationships and the ways of the world. Before Tianzong left, his parting words held other meanings. It was an opportunity to visit Tianzong Palace and first deal with the 3 great eternal beings, allowing Qixin Temple to establish a firm foothold in the upper-tier spacetime. Otherwise, it would be hard to convince everyone. And there was another, which was to recover the middle-tier spacetime. And he now had a legitimate reason. Qixin Temple originally belonged to the Maluo spacetime of the middle-tier spacetime. Now, going to unify the middle-tier spacetime was quite reasonable. Besides, without him, the middle-tier spacetime would have fallen into Beirut's hands. At that time, not to mention removing the barriers, the middle, upper, and lower tiers would be completely severed. His current mission to recover the middle-tier spacetime was also logical and justified. Understanding Jian Wushuang's thoughts, Jinling clapped her hands in delight and said, "If that Abyssal Lord had half your insight, none of this would have happened. I fully support you. Go ahead. And I'll immediately notify Wuxia to take over the territory." "Isn't this a bit too hasty?" Jian Wushuang felt that Jinling was more anxious than he was and even more shameless. He hadn't even reached the mid-tier or midstream spacetimes yet and was already thinking about how to divide the territories. Other things can wait, but this matter must be addressed quickly. You don't know this, but Qixin Temple is nearly out of resources. Once someone becomes a universe master, they can no longer exchange treasures at Qixin Temple. Now we can only train some Tao lords and emperors. Jinling sighed and shook his head. All these years, we've relied on Wuxia and Huqing to sustain us by scouring secret realms for treasures to fill the gaps at Qixin Temple. If I didn't have to oversee the low-tier spacetimes, I would have gone myself. Jinling made himself seem extremely pitiful, like a lonely, elderly man who had no choice but to risk his life. Even though Jian Wushuang knew Jinling was putting on a show for him, he couldn't help but pat Jinling on the shoulder and comfort him. "Don't worry, as long as I'm here." After comforting Jinling, Jian Wushuang immediately set off. Currently, there were few strong individuals in the low-tier spacetimes. Most had moved to the mid-tier spacetimes as Qixin Temple. What Jinling said about only training Tao lords and emperors was not entirely true. Universe masters were unwilling to stay in the low-tier spacetimes and naturally did not need to remain at Qixin Temple. Even if they wanted to train others, they wouldn't look favorably upon them. Sigh! Jian Wushuang could only sigh helplessly. Jinling still liked to play the victim. There was no change from before. Babata! After leaving Qixin Temple, a brand new pyramid appeared in front of him. Unfortunately, this pyramid had speed but no defense or attack capabilities. Even so, Babata had paid a high price to refine it. This new pyramid flying boat could reach cosmic-level speeds, powered by Jian Wushuang's divine power. This time, he could use it confidently. A single injection of divine power was enough to make the pyramid circle the entire northern spacetime. And it was incredibly fast. Traveling to the mid-tier spacetimes, which used to take an era, now only took 3 years. Taking advantage of this time, he looked into the current situation. The upper-tier spacetimes was occupied by 3 major eternal forces. Then there was the ancient moon sect. The other spacetimes were still fragmented, but if attacked rashly, even sand would form a tower. They couldn't be underestimated. He could only consider the fallen soul spacetime. As for the forces in the mid-tier spacetimes, he didn't take them seriously. He had told the Abyssal Lord before that coming to the mid-tier spacetimes again would be different. Buzz! The pyramid shuttled through spacetime, heading to the mid-tier spacetimes at the fastest speed. Along the way, he saw many warships all heading to the mid-tier spacetimes. Few were coming from the mid-tier spacetimes to the low-tier spacetimes. Most were returning to move their clans to the mid-tier spacetimes. The low-tier spacetimes wasn't unsuitable for universe masters to cultivate, just that it couldn't accommodate too many. Dao lords and emperors were not affected. Originally, he planned to move the entire Qixin temple to the upper-tier spacetimes, but then he thought it would be better to leave a branch temple to train Dao lords and emperors. Universe masters below the 5th tribulation realm would stay in the mid-tier spacetimes, with some 7th tribulation masters guarding it. The remaining universe masters would move to the upper-tier spacetimes. Resources should be used where they were needed most. Layer by layer, they advanced. There was no need for a sudden transition that would break their established foundation. The upper-tier spacetimes might not have enough territory to train Dao lords and emperors. It wasn't as vast as the low-tier spacetimes, which allowed for unlimited selection of elites. Anyway, no one would compete for the low-tier spacetimes. This way, Qixin Temple's legacy could continue indefinitely. Now it seemed like they were already on the 9th generation of inheritors. Each generation was stronger than the last. 8th Tribulation Universe Masters were now in groups. Sooner or later, they would surpass those eternal forces. For now, they needed to slowly expand their territory. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. The pyramid arrived at the abyssal spacetime. At this time, outside the abyssal spacetime, there were various battle formations and countless strong individuals guarding it. They were all preparing for the powerhouses of Qixin Temple. Not everyone in the mid-tier spacetimes liked to align with Qixin Temple. Some still resisted and sought refuge in the abyssal spacetime, giving the abyssal spacetime a chance to contend with Qixin Temple. After today, that chance would be gone. Jian Wushuang stepped out of the pyramid. When this pyramid, which had once terrified the mid-tier spacetimes, reappeared, few recognized it. After all, millions of eras had passed, but some sharp-eyed individuals still recognized it. The pyramid. Jian Wushuang. It's over. They knew who had arrived. Jian Wushuang slowly raised his hand, looking at the space-time restrictions, and casually tore them apart, directly ripping the formation to shreds. The entire formation was torn to pieces by him. However, he did not harm the cultivators. He only destroyed the formation. Even though this formation couldn't stop him, it was just a show of force. Swoosh! With the formation destroyed, several super-strong individuals from the abyssal spacetime appeared. Leading them was the Abyssal Lord. The current Abyssal Lord had already reached the peak of the 8th tribulation, but he lacked the confidence to pass the 9th tribulation. His own combat power had reached 20 million. Therefore, he dared to take the lead. He dared to compete with Qixin Temple. Under his command were several universe masters with divine power of 15 million. In terms of combat power, they were almost on par with Qixin Temple, only losing to Hu Qing. But now Jian Wushuang had appeared. The Abyssal Lord knew that the person in front of him was not as easygoing as that bald monk. So his expression softened and he revealed a smile. So it's Taoist Wushuang. It's been many years since we last met. When did you come out of seclusion? Seeing that the other party wanted to catch up with him, Jian Wushuang was in no hurry. He calmly replied, I just came out of seclusion. Hearing that the Abyssal Lord's strength has grown, I couldn't wait to spar with you. Bar. The current Abyssal Lord indeed had this thought. He had reached a level comparable to the 9th Tribulation's realm, with basic divine power of 20 million. By using divine power secret techniques and origin source Dao Arena, his power exceeded 25 million. With his current vision, he could see that Jian Wushuang was still a universe master of the 7th Tribulation. He couldn't believe that Jian Wushuang was truly as powerful as the rumors said. Please enlighten me. The Abyssal Lord wasted no words, waving his hand for the people behind him to retreat. Buzz! The Abyssal Lord erupted first, his divine power directly surpassing 20 million. Jian Wushuang remained unmoved, only raising his hand calmly and saying, "Maluo time, Jian Wushuang seeks your guidance." As soon as he finished speaking, with just a glance, he pierced through the Abyssal Lord's weak spot. An extreme origin source and powerful divine power burst forth instantly. In his peak state, Jian Wushuang flashed to the Abyssal Lord's front in an instant, shattering the opponent's divine body with a single punch, along with the collapse of his origin source Tao arena. "You!" The Abyssal Lord's expression was filled with a mix of emotions: disbelief, reluctance, confusion, fear, and dread. A universe master of the seventh tribulation broke through his divine body and origin source Tao arena with a single punch. Defeated. Completely defeated. He had originally thought that if it wasn't a crushing defeat, he could still hold on. But ever since hearing Jian Wushuang mention Maluo time, he had completely lost. Lost to a successor of a middle-level spacetime. Accepted, everyone would be considered one of their own. If not accepted, then he wouldn't be polite about it. While the Abyssal Lord was in a daze, the universe masters who had taken refuge under him were already moved. None of them were fools. They knew what Jian Wushuang had come for this time. Just one punch had shattered the Abyssal Lord, completely breaking their spirits. They no longer dared to have any thoughts of resistance. Submitting to Qixin Temple early on could secure a good position. They couldn't win in a fight, so they had no choice but to follow along. Thank you. The Abyssal Lord understood that if he didn't accept this life force, the second punch would land on his face. A wise man submits to circumstances. Submitting to Qixin Temple was not a big deal. At least it would ensure they could enter the upper-tier spacetimes in the future. Jian Wushuang was a person who was the fairest. He treated everyone the same regardless of closeness. As long as they were his own, they would benefit. No need to be polite. We are all one family, Jian Wushuang said with a faint smile. The Abyssal Lord followed with an awkward smile. The universe masters of the 8th Tribulation Realm behind him also laughed. Yes, we are all one family now. We will rely on the care of the first Divine Lord in the future. One of the universe masters of the 8th Tribulation even opened the portal of the abyssal spacetime and respectfully said, "Divine Lord, please come in." Such a quick change in attitude left Jian Wushuang both amused and exasperated. It seemed Hu Qing had been too kind to them. He had just scared them a little, and they became so attentive. In the entire mid-tier spacetime, one punch ended the dispute. It also saved a lot of resources. "No, I won't go in and sit. Later, you all will head together to Qixin Temple in Giant Peak Spacetime to discuss the migration to the upper-tier spacetimes." His words left everyone stunned. Even the Abyssal Lord hadn't expected it to be so soon. One moment they had just resolved the issues in the mid-tier spacetime, and the next moment they were to move to the upper-tier spacetime. It was indeed Jian Wushuang. He was decisive in his actions. The Abyssal Lord quickly understood. After the three eternal beings became 9th Tribulation, they quickly left the northern spacetime. When they left a message. When their divine power reached 30 million, they needed to leave the northern spacetime. The divine power Jian Wushuang had just demonstrated definitely exceeded 30 million. It was even much stronger than that of the 9th Tribulation's realm. He probably wouldn't stay in the northern spacetime for long, so he urgently wanted to enter the upper-tier spacetimes. "All right, we will go immediately." The Abyssal Lord also completely accepted the idea. Jian Wushuang would soon leave the northern spacetime. After joining Qixin Temple, he might still be able to continue his carefree life. Some of the early strong ones from the mid-tier spacetimes who joined Qixin Temple had now risen to high positions. In Qixin Temple, strength was respected. Although there were many factions, strength and hierarchy were still prioritized. There was no such thing as family bloodlines. If one's strength was insufficient, even if they were the son of Qixin, it wouldn't matter. For example, some of the original divine generals had become universe masters, but if their strength was too weak, they would either be given an idle position in the lower-tier spacetimes or continue to strive in the upper-tier spacetimes. There was no such thing as people who just idled around. With the Abyssal Lord's strength joining Qishan Temple, it wouldn't be long before he became part of the higher echelons, or even the top tier. He could once again enter the upper tier spacetimes. All the pressure was borne by Jian Wushuang. Even if Jian Wushuang left in the future, his strength, coupled with the backing of Qishan Temple, would allow him to stand firm in the upper tier spacetimes. As for his own family, there were only a few of them, and they needed to understand the importance of strength. Always under his protection, they found it hard to grow. Seeing the other party so cooperative, Jian Wushuang said nothing more. After entering the pyramid, he headed straight for the Giant Peak spacetime. Nowadays, the Giant Peak spacetime had become the headquarters of Qishan Temple in the middle-tier spacetimes. The main hall of the lower-tier spacetime was led by Jinling. Thus, the Qishan Temple in the middle-tier spacetimes was headed by Wuxia. It was appropriate since Wuxia was a proper middle-tier spacetime cultivator. Letting him take charge was the right decision. Wuxia had taken control of 70% of the middle-tier spacetime. The last remaining Abyssal Lord was also dealt with by Jian Wushuang. Since then, Qishan Temple had mastered both the middle and lower-tier spacetimes. They were about to impact the upper-tier spacetimes. Buzz! The pyramid tore through space and instantly entered the Giant Peak spacetime. Swish! After walking out of the pyramid, Jian Wushuang glanced at the Giant Peak spacetime. Although he knew the current foundation of Qishan Temple was terrifying, he couldn't help but sigh when he saw it. The entire Giant Peak spacetime had more than 20 Universe Masters at the 8th Tribulation level. There were hundreds of Universe Masters at the 7th Tribulation level. The slightly weaker ones numbered in the thousands. In the past, this could have swept through the entire ancient moon spacetime. Unfortunately, Qishan Temple was not the only powerful side. The entire northern spacetime was growing rapidly, just like Qishan Temple. Rising again, becoming great again. They had now achieved it. If Shanjun could see it, he might feel a bit relieved. Wuxia, he called softly. A figure instantly appeared, and upon seeing him, his face lit up with joy. I heard from Jinling that you were on your way to the middle-tier spacetime. I didn't expect you to arrive so quickly. It's all thanks to the pyramid you sponsored. Now it can easily burst into cosmic speeds, much faster than before. When Babata had initially crafted the pyramid, Wuxia had helped a lot, both financially and with efforts. He never had the chance to thank him. Hearing this, Wuxia quickly waved his hand and said, "This is nothing. I used to think your greatest achievement was eliminating Mieshang. Later, I realized your vision was the sharpest. You drove us out of Qishan Temple early on, leading to today's glory. A grand gamble of millions of eras ago. Most had accepted their loss, but some were still dissatisfied." Jian Wushuang went into seclusion, ignoring major and minor matters alike. He didn't properly teach his disciples. But now, Qishan Temple had become the overlord of the middle-tier spacetimes. In time, it could take over the entire northern spacetime, could even advance towards the upper-tier spacetimes. This was the biggest gain. It also proved Jian Wushuang's vision back then. If they had stayed in the lower-tier spacetimes for stable development, they wouldn't have so many 8th Tribulation level beings now. He had opened a door for them. "You're too kind. Come, let's take a look at my territory. I'll introduce you to some juniors. You've been in seclusion for millions of eras. How much has your strength grown?" Among the juniors, there are now peak 8th Tribulation level powerhouses. If you're careless, you might get surpassed, Wuxia said as he walked. He still didn't know that Jian Wushuang had already dealt with the Abyssal Lord easily. Jian Wushuang simply nodded silently, not saying much. He was quite satisfied just watching the enthusiastic practitioners along the way. This one, the Golden Body Arhat, do you remember? He was once Hu Qing's disciple, and is now in the 8th Tribulation realm. Wuxia pointed to a golden ancient Buddha lecturing in a Tao arena, introducing him. The golden bodhisattva's real name was Shi Nan. During the Taoist assembly, he had shown remarkable talent. Now, he was the highest achiever among that batch of personal disciples. As for Jian Wushuang's 3 disciples, only Wan Shan had reached the 8th Tribulation realm. However, the super-eternal ancient transformation was still a significant burden for Wan Shan. Moreover, he lacked the power of the starry sky, relying only on divine power. The golden divine power was much inferior to the blue starry sky power. After its display, the augmented divine power was also somewhat lacking, making him not particularly outstanding among the many in the 8th Tribulation Realm in Qixin Temple. By the way, look who this is? Wuxia pointed to another dojo. A woman in plain clothes was lecturing on swordsmanship. It was Ji Tang. Though she was in the 7th Tribulation, she possessed combat power comparable to the 8th Tribulation Realm. Walking with Wuxia around the hall, Jian Wushuang got a sense of the current foundation of Qixin Temple. Just watch. It won't be long before we can take down the abyssal spacetime. Wuxia envisioned the future with delight. But at that moment, someone outside transmitted a message that all the 8th Tribulation Realm beings in the abyssal spacetime had suddenly gathered and arrived outside the giant peak spacetime. Wuxia was startled upon hearing this. Although he had reached the 8th Tribulation Realm, his combat power was inferior to that of the Abyssal Lord. Moreover, Hu Qing was not in the middle-tier spacetimes, but fortunately Jian Wushuang was here. Otherwise, this time would be a huge loss. Brother Wushuang, I must ask for your help again. Hu Qing, Wuxia was about to explain something when Jian Wushuang interrupted by waving his hand and saying, "Let them in. They are already one of us." One of us. The Universe Master of the 8th Tribulation Realm guarding the formation outside also transmitted a message to Wuxia, saying that the Abyssal Lord had gathered dozens of 8th Tribulation Realm Universe Masters and was standing outside the formation, claiming to discuss matters regarding the upper-tier spacetimes. This news excited Wuxia greatly. He looked at Jian Wushuang and asked excitedly, "When did you manage to settle them?" Back then, even with Hu Qing's help, he couldn't take down the abyssal spacetime. He knew the divine power of the Abyssal Lord exceeded 20 million. Currently, the strongest few 8th Tribulation Realm Universe Masters in Qixin Temple only had divine power barely reaching 20 million. They were no match for the Abyssal Lord. Jian Wushuang had just entered the middle-tier spacetimes and managed to settle the Abyssal Lord without making a sound. "Have you become an 8th Tribulation Universe Master?" Wuxia couldn't see through Jian Wushuang's realm and thought he might have reached the 8th Tribulation Realm. Otherwise, no matter how strong he was, he couldn't have settled the abyssal spacetime so quietly. Could it be that he reasoned with the Abyssal Lord and persuaded him to surrender? Having fought the Abyssal Lord for so long, Wuxia knew his temperament well and thought it was impossible for him to surrender easily. Jian Wushuang shook his head and said, "I have not yet passed the tribulation. The Abyssal Lord is just a minor issue. Let them in, so we can discuss matters regarding the upper-tier spacetimes." "No problem." Wuxia immediately gave the order to let the Abyssal Lord and his people in. With Jian Wushuang present, he was not afraid of them causing any trouble. Originally, when Jinling informed him that Jian Wushuang was coming to the middle-tier spacetimes, Wuxia had planned to explain the complexities of this place. Unexpectedly, in Jian Wushuang's eyes, no matter how complicated things were, they seemed simple. "Haha, Hallmaster Wuxia, long time no see. Your strength has improved quite a bit." The Abyssal Lord, from a distance, loudly flattered. But upon reaching Jian Wushuang, he turned and respectfully saluted. Wuxia didn't mind these formalities and invited everyone into the guest hall. He also summoned all the high-ranking members of Qixin Temple to discuss the matters regarding the upper-tier spacetimes. The upper tier was different from the middle tier. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang would not have sought out Wuxia but would have directly attacked the upper-tier spacetimes. Now, killing was different from before. In the past, he would have simply killed his way through. Duanya spacetime. The target proposed by Wuxia was quite different from what Jian Wushuang had in mind. Duanya spacetime was an incredibly powerful spacetime, on par with ancient moon spacetime. There were hundreds of experts at the 8th Tribulation. Among them, 10 were super experts with divine power exceeding 20 million. The top expert of Duanya spacetime, the Lord of Moya, was rumored to be undergoing the 9th Tribulation. He might become the 4th Universe Master at the 9th Tribulation Realm in northern spacetime. Such a figure was not someone Jian Wushuang dared to provoke. Moreover, this spacetime was qualified to be in the upper-tier spacetimes. There was no need to seize Duanya spacetime. But Wuxia kept insisting. Jian Wushuang sensed something was off, suspecting someone was behind the scenes. A universe master at the 9th Tribulation Realm was highly regarded by even the Realm King. How could they allow internal conflict? Wuxia Hall Master, you might be going too far. The Abyssal Lord thought Wuxia had gone mad. Just because of Jian Wushuang's presence, it didn't mean they could do as they pleased. Provoking Duanya spacetime was no different from attacking an eternal power. Even if Jian Wushuang conquered it, there would be future restrictions. It would cause the superpowers of the upper-tier spacetimes to unite and besiege Qixin Temple. This was something no one wanted to see. The Abyssal Lord adjusted his breath, then turned to Jian Wushuang and advised, "Divine Lord Wushuang, what do you think?" His proposal was in line with Jian Wushuang's thoughts. Both aimed to occupy fallen soul spacetime. It had weak foundations and power. Its resources were relatively fewer, but they could securely hold this position. Wuxia, if there's anything, why not just say it? From now on, we're all on the same side. No need to hide it. He knew Wuxia had some unspeakable difficulties. It was better to lay everything out rather than whispering behind his back, ensuring everyone's confidence. Now, almost only Wuxia supported attacking Duanya spacetime. Wuxia's face darkened. He glanced at him and sighed, "Brother Wushuang, it's not that I don't want to say it. This matter is very complicated. Let me put it this way, if we take down Moya spacetime and kill the Lord of Moya, the Realm King will bestow treasures upon us." The Realm King. Upon hearing this title, the Abyssal Lord was stunned. He knew about the Realm King, once very mysterious, but since the barrier was lost, all gods descended together, enhancing the foundation of northern spacetime. Many at the 8th Tribulation knew of the existence of gods. Furthermore, they knew that the northern spacetime master was the Realm King. So hearing the term Realm King left him astonished. He didn't expect Wuxia to have a connection with the Realm King. Actually, this wasn't a secret in the upper-tier spacetimes. Only experts in the middle-tier spacetimes were less informed. Hall Master Wuxia, you mustn't joke about this. You need to explain it properly. Abyssal Lord became somewhat excited upon hearing about the Realm King. He also grew curious about Wuxia's identity. The 8th Tribulation Realm experts following the Abyssal Lord were equally shocked, perking up their ears, eager to learn more. In their eyes, they were just cultivators. The gods were the truly exalted beings. Revival secret technique. Life secret technique. Space-time barrier. These things could be produced just by asking for them. They were causing the entire northern spacetime to ascend. To them, this was all too mysterious, and the information they knew was very limited. That's why they were so curious. Jian Wushuang was different. When he heard that the Realm King would bestow treasures, he realized that this Duanya spacetime must be entangled with things it shouldn't be. For instance, threats from the Realm King continent. Based on the intelligence he had, the Lord of Moya should also have a Realm King token, being one of the first batch of 8 Tribulation Realm powerhouses to venture to the Realm King continent. Later, when the Great Tribulation descended, he had no choice but to undergo the tribulation, but he still failed. He became a scattered tribulation until the revival secret technique emerged. He became a universe master once again. This would be his second attempt to pass the 9th Tribulation. Yet, the Realm King wanted to eliminate the Lord of Moya. This made perfect sense. Something must have gone wrong. Explain. Wuxia remained silent. He couldn't bring himself to explain, because it was embarrassing. Of course, it was embarrassing for the Realm King. But as a direct disciple of the Realm King, he had to share in that embarrassment. So he was unwilling to speak. Jian Wushuang just glanced at him, then slowly stood up. "I see. There's no need for an explanation." Seeing Wuxia's liver-colored face made it clear. The Realm King must have stumbled and been outwitted. This was also good. It was legitimate. The Realm King commands: eliminate the traitors, capture Duanya spacetime, kill the Lord of Moya, and reward with the Realm King token. Cleaning up for the Realm King was acceptable. He had done such things more than once or twice, but the benefits had to be clarified in advance. The treasures for crossing the ninth tribulation had to be provided by the Realm King, and some Realm King tokens had to be given to those who contributed. Duanya spacetime wasn't just one person's territory. Besides the Lord of Moya, there were many other super strong individuals. Others had to contribute as well. Currently, Qishan Temple could mobilize 10 universe masters of 8th tribulations with divine power exceeding 15 million. The Abyssal Lord naturally had to go as well. If he wasn't allowed to go, he would be anxious. His divine power was already at 25 million, yet he hadn't been to the Realm King continent. He knew the importance of the Realm King token. He stood up directly and volunteered to lead the charge. I'll handle the Yin and Yang elders of Duanya spacetime. These two had divine power around 20 million each. Hui Qing was currently in seclusion, striving for the ninth tribulation and couldn't spare the time. Only the Abyssal Lord could handle them. Wuxia took a deep breath and first sent a message to the Realm King, conveying Jian Wushuang's demands. He waited for a reply. He didn't dare to agree in advance. The hall remained silent for a long time before Wu's expression softened, and he said, "Then let's set off immediately. I'll depart first. The pyramid is left for you all." He hadn't been to the upper-tier spacetimes for a long time, and there were some old friends to visit. He left the pyramid to Wuxia and others, as his speed was not inferior to the pyramid. This matter had to be resolved quickly, lest it drag on too long. He was now close to reaching the 8 tribulations, only lacking the necessary treasures. The Lord of Moya was in seclusion, striving for the 9th tribulation. If delayed, the other party might succeed in crossing the tribulation. He didn't doubt the other party's success. Anyone who made the Realm King bear such a grudge must have obtained something they shouldn't have, or met someone they shouldn't have met. His strength was not to be underestimated. 30 million at the minimum. It might even surpass 30 million divine power. Wuxia was astonished and said, "No need to be so hasty, why not go together?" "There's no need. You should also hurry and cultivate. Otherwise, you'll fall behind when you go to the Realm King continent." Jian Wushuang teased. Then his figure began to disappear. He left behind a triangular pyramid. Whoosh! After his figure completely disappeared, a buzzing sound resonated through spacetime. Even after Jian Wushuang had left, the Abyssal Lord couldn't help but exclaim, "The strength of the first Divine Lord is indeed unfathomable. Just in terms of speed, it probably surpasses the 9th tribulation. Stop flattering and quickly arrange the people," Wuxia said irritably. He had been contending with the Abyssal Lord for so long and had never shown him a good face. The Abyssal Lord didn't mind and simply turned to look at his subordinates and then said, "All of you go." Most of the people he brought along were those who had joined him halfway, all driven by self-interest. The Realm King's token was something everyone desired, so naturally, they all wanted to make contributions to earn it. However, at Qishan Temple there wasn't such fierce competition. As long as the divine power reached 20 million, Wuxia could request the Realm King's order directly from the Realm King without risking his life. This was a personal favor between the Realm King and Wuxia, not a special treatment for Qishan Temple. In the upper-tier spacetimes, as long as one's divine power reached 20 million, they would also receive the Realm King token, although the process might be slower. Wuxia only needed to give a nod, making it much more convenient. Therefore, he didn't plan to bring too many people. He only selected 10 universe masters whose divine power exceeded 15 million. In the upper-tier spacetimes, there was also a branch of Qishan Temple, though its scale was small. There were a few super-powerful beings in the 8 tribulation realm. Among them was Jian Wushuang's disciple Wan Shan. The rest of you can prepare to head to the Duanya spacetime and arrange for the integration into Qishan Temple. Wuxia deliberately gave orders in front of the Abyssal Lord, then turned around and said with a smile, "Brother Abyssal, there shouldn't be any problem on your side, right?" Abyssal Lord shook his head upon hearing this. "No problem. In the future, to obtain the Realm King's token, he would still have to rely on Wuxia. Naturally, there wouldn't be any issues. Moreover, he had agreed, so he cooperated obediently." That's good, that's good. Wuxia nodded in satisfaction and waved his hand, saying, in that case, let's set off as well, and not fall too far behind Brother Wuxia. Babata, activate the pyramid. Buzz. Wu's side made slight adjustments and also began advancing toward the upper-tier spacetimes. At this moment, Jian Wuxuang had already left the giant peak spacetime. His figure was like a towering mountain, walking through the long river of spacetime. From time to time, tiny glimmers of light flashed by him. Although the light seemed insignificant, each was a being of the 7th Tribulation Realm, and some were even universe masters of the 8th Tribulation Realm. However, compared to Jian Wuxuang's divine body, they were far inferior. With his 40 million divine power fully unleashed, his speed indeed surpassed some of the 9th Tribulation Realm beings. Jian Wuxuang. A voice came from the depths of spacetime. A familiar voice that made Jian Wuxuang's eyes brighten and his speed slow down. Realm King. The two consciousnesses met and smiled at each other. The matter of Duanya spacetime will trouble you again this time. The Realm King smiled with a bit of embarrassment. Troubling Jian Wuxuang again made him feel somewhat uneasy. He came over in advance and handed the treasure Jian Wuxuang needed. Jian Wuxuang accepted it without hesitation and politely said, Realm King, you speak too highly. I am a cultivator of northern spacetime, and anyone who threatens northern spacetime threatens me. Naturally, I have to step forward to resolve this. However, what is the background of this Lord of Moya? Lord of Moya? The Realm King's eyes held a trace of reminiscence, and he sighed deeply. Actually, it's also my fault. The memories converged into a scene, recounting some distant grievances in the northern spacetime. Back in the northern spacetime, there were actually several universe masters at the 8th Tribulation level with extremely high talent. Among them was the Lord of Moya. He was a strong figure of the same batch as Tianzong and the other two ancient existences. Moreover, their relationships were very good. At that time, the strength of the Lord of Moya was even slightly stronger than the three ancient existences. As their strength continued to grow, they also received some inheritances from the Realm King and later went to the Realm God continent. But it was at this time that the Lord of Moya began to change. He witnessed the strength of the outside world. He was unwilling to stay in the northern spacetime. Only then did he learn that the cultivators of the northern spacetime could not pass the 9th Tribulation because their life levels were insufficient. This realization had a significant impact on them at the time. However, as their strength continued to grow, the supreme tribulation of the origin source was unavoidable. One had to undergo the tribulation, but failure was inevitable. It would have been better if the Realm King hadn't spoken. But once he did, everyone's mindset changed. Yet they were powerless. During that period, the four of them were disheartened and abandoned their ambitions. They lost their fighting spirit. The Realm King, feeling guilty, sought help from the Great Realm King and obtained 3 divine fruits that could stabilize the origin source and continuously suppress their realm. Until the birth of the God of Life. This created a special tier. Ancient beings, like the universe gods without tribulations, evading the supreme law rules. But there were only 3 divine fruits. The Realm King had no choice. He had to set up trials. In the first trial, a competition of combat strength, Moya came first. In the second trial, a competition of divine power, he was still first. But in the third trial of willpower, the Lord of Moya fell far behind the top 3, even lagging behind the universe masters of the 7th Tribulation level. The Realm King was very conflicted at first, but then he encountered a prophet from the divine realm. An omniscient prophet from the starry sky. From the prophet, the Realm King received 3 names. It was clear to Jian Wuxuang who these 3 were. The Lord of Moya was not selected. He could only face failure. I told him back then that when the resurrection secret method was revealed, he would be the first resurrected cultivator. The Realm King sighed and shook his head. Even the fact that Moya had lived for so many years was due to the Realm King using the power of life to sustain him. But the Lord of Moya still ended up on the wrong path. Jian Wuxuang sighed and said, different mindsets lead to wrong paths. I understand. The second time he crossed the 9th Tribulation, the difficulty increased several times. The Lord of Moya had been hanging on by the power of life for these years, unable to accumulate origin source at all. After resurrection, he had to cultivate step by step again. Time had worn down his patience. All his patience had been used up waiting for the God of life. After resurrection, he couldn't even cultivate in seclusion. At that moment, he understood that he was finished. His whole life was ruined. No one could save him. He watched helplessly as the three practitioners of his era, who were once inferior to him, all stepped into the 9 tribulations realm, and the resentment hidden deep in his heart surfaced. That mix of unwillingness and hatred drove the Lord of Moya onto a path of no return. Jian Wushuang, if possible, give him a way out. Realm King sighed. Actually, he wasn't wrong, because there was no other choice at that time. If there had been 4 divine fruits, even if the prophet had said Moya was unsuitable, he would still have given him a divine fruit. During the dark ages of the northern spacetime, it was these 4 dazzling universe masters of the 8th tribulations realm that gave the Realm King hope. He saw the glorious future of the northern spacetime through them. His feelings for the 4 were special, so he didn't want to see anyone fall. Jian Wushuang, however, felt the Realm King was too soft-hearted and said sharply, "Lord Realm King, this matter has nothing to do with you. I still maintain that he poses a threat to the entire northern spacetime and doesn't deserve another chance." Though his mindset had changed a lot now, even becoming bloodthirsty, he was not a saint. Those who should be killed must be killed. The Realm King had supported the Lord of Moya for so many years, only to be betrayed. This ingrate must die. If it were someone else, he might give the Realm King some face, but the Lord of Moya deserved to be executed. He's also a pitiful person. The Realm King wanted to say more, but Jian Wushuang interrupted him with a wave. "I'm not Hu Qing. I face reality. If someone was truly forced with a knife to their neck, he would cripple their origin source and divine body. If not, he would kill them." Buzz. Jian Wushuang's figure flickered. "Let's go." He didn't waste more words, his figure flashing continuously as he headed towards the upper-tier spacetimes. He had a rough understanding of the Lord of Moya's situation. Betraying the northern spacetime? This matter probably had something to do with Zamasu. He couldn't be careless. He traveled at full speed, taking decades. He arrived at the upper-tier spacetimes again. The upper-tier spacetimes had changed a lot compared to before. There were spacetime-level continents or secret realms everywhere, and some very large universes. He didn't stop along the way, contacted the Qishan Temple branch stationed in Duanya spacetime, learned the exact location, and set off again. At the same time, he notified Wuxia and the Abyssal Lord. He informed them of the situation in Duanya spacetime. If it was indeed related to Zamasu, even he would be in danger. Not to mention Wuxia and Abyssal Lord. To be safe, he also contacted Divine Wood King. As an ancient master of the 8th tribulations realm, after resurrection, his foundation was very strong. With the treasures bestowed by Realm King, his current strength was among the top 10 in the northern spacetime. From their conversation, he learned that the Divine Wood King was now the guardian leader of the ancient moon sect. His status was almost on par with the ancient moon pope. Hearing that Jian Wushuang was going to eliminate the traitors of the northern spacetime, he immediately gathered 10 universe masters of the 8th tribulations realm, each with divine power of 15 million. They rushed straight to Duanya spacetime. With Jian Wushuang leading, he naturally had no worries. He was just going to get some benefits and catch up with Jian Wushuang. He had met Hu Qing and felt inferior. Hu Qing told him Jian Wushuang was even stronger. This made him curious about how strong Jian Wushuang was, daring to go alone to kill the Lord of Moya, while he was only responsible for dealing with the weaker ones outside. Actually, Jian Wushuang was worried about the experts on the Qishan Temple side. He feared that if something went wrong without support, they would be besieged by the powerful ones in Duanya spacetime. For so many years, it hadn't been easy for the Qishan Temple to accumulate these resources, which were the result of Wuxia and others' hard work. They couldn't afford to lose such strong individuals due to a reckless move. Asking Divine Wood King for help was just a matter of sharing some treasures. Treasures could be fought for, but once people were lost, they were truly gone. Buzz. Jian Wushuang's body shook and he stopped. The surrounding spacetime began to collapse. Haining Villa. This was the Qixin Temple's branch in Duanya spacetime. The upper-tier spacetimes were originally under Hu Qing's responsibility, and the headquarters was set in Fallen Soul spacetime. The early targets were the same, all in Fallen Soul spacetime. Although they didn't have large territories in the upper-tier spacetimes, they occupied many universes and secret realms within some spacetimes. This depended on the strength of the spacetime. The Duanya spacetime could rank in the top 5. Now, it was even stronger than the Eternal spacetime and was vaguely the first. Therefore, Qixin Temple's branch in Duanya spacetime was very small. It was just a small territory in a narrow crack in Duanya Mountain, a reward from the Lord of Moya after killing a demon lord of Duanya spacetime. The powerful figure stationed here was none other than someone very familiar with Jian Wushuang. Lord Guangying. Jian Wushuang slowly descended. The figure had already been waiting here. Lord Guangying looked solemn and said in a low voice, "Jian Wushuang." It was indeed too sudden. In just 100 years, Qixin Temple's plan had undergone significant changes. From initially focusing on the Fallen Soul spacetime to changing it to Duanya spacetime, it had taken less than 100 years. This rendered many of the planned arrangements futile. Qixin Temple's layout in Fallen Soul spacetime was extensive. After Hu Qing went into seclusion, Wu Tian personally went to Fallen Soul spacetime to oversee it. The direct force, Wujian sect, had infiltrated Fallen Soul spacetime for millions of eras. Now, they suddenly announced an attack on Duanya spacetime. Many people were unaware of this matter. Even Lord Guangying, who was stationed in Duanya spacetime, had just found out. How could he not be anxious? As soon as Jian Wushuang arrived, he was pulled into a secret room, and layers of barriers were set up. Only then did Lord Guangying dare to ask, "What exactly happened? It's hard to say on the way. You need to explain it to me now. It's a long story. Then make it short." Lord Guangying appeared very angry. Qixin Temple had reached its current position through years of effort, and the sense of belonging had long been maximized. Marching into the upper-tier spacetimes had been a set plan for years. They had been infiltrating Fallen Soul spacetime, turning 1/3 of its high-level officials. Suddenly changing the strategy was hard for many to accept. Lord Guangying had been stationed in Moya spacetime for many years, mainly to stabilize the high-level officials there. When Qixin Temple attacked the upper-tier spacetimes, the remaining 8 major spacetimes would certainly not sit idly by. Anyone could see Qixin Temple's ambition, and maybe they would be the next target. Currently, the 3 great eternal realms had tacitly approved. This was because of Wu's influence. Then there was the ancient moon spacetime. Jian Wushuang had some connections with the ancient moon pope, and with the guarantee of divine wood king, there were no objections. Moya spacetime was also a target for alliance. The combined strength of the other 3 spacetimes was average, so intimidation was sufficient. Lord Guangying's mission here was significant. He had been wooing those high-level officials for years, and now that they were planning to attack Moya spacetime, knowing Moya spacetime's strength, he couldn't sit still. Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing were the only ones who could handle the 2 supreme powerhouses, not to mention the Lord of Moya himself. Their peak combat power was simply insufficient. When the time came, the Lord of Moya and his 2 protectors would restrain Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing, leaving the other powerhouses free to flatten Qixin Temple. Moreover, Hu Qing was currently in seclusion, striving to break through to the 9th Tribulation Realm. Lord of Moya was also in seclusion, attempting to break through to the 9th Tribulation Realm. No matter what, they had to wait until both of them succeeded. The best-case scenario was for the Lord of Moya to fail while Hu Qing succeeded. This would simplify matters considerably. Qixin Temple could directly become an eternal power. They could break the current structure of the northern spacetime early and crush the Lord of Moya. But this possibility was extremely slim. Even Jian Wushuang, who knew the inside story, thought it was impossible, let alone Lord Guangying, who didn't. It wasn't that they didn't recognize Hu Qing's talent, but he had just entered seclusion, and it was impossible for him to emerge so soon. The shortest time estimated was 1,000,000 eons, and the longest was indefinite. Hu Qing had only been in seclusion for a few days. Lord of Moya, on the other hand, had been in seclusion for tens of thousands of eons. With the treasures given by Zamasu, he might be close to succeeding. Even if he hadn't succeeded, his current strength was terrifying. Conventional wisdom estimated his power to be over 30 million, and with Zamasu's help, it couldn't be measured by normal standards, starting at 35 million. Jian Wushuang remained unmoved. After hearing Lord Guangying's analysis, he felt he had been a bit reckless. But the arrow was already on the bow and had to be shot. He then revealed the truth to Lord Guangying. Realm King's tokens were minor. The threat from Zamasu was significant. What? Lord Guangying was incredulous and asked, "We can't handle this on our own. We must mobilize other forces." Jian Wushuang's face turned awkward. After a dry cough, he said, "Guangying, we can't let outsiders know about this. Otherwise, when the Duanya spacetime is vacated, who do you think will claim it?" But Lord Guangying looked troubled. He was right. The Duanya spacetime would definitely be divided among the major powers, and they wouldn't get much. If they wanted to have it all, they needed to show some sincerity. Of course, Jian Wushuang had mainly been careless, thinking he could handle it alone, along with the Abyssal Lord and others. He hadn't anticipated the complexity of the situation. Moreover, the treasures offered by the Realm King were exactly what he needed to survive the 8th tribulation. Realm King knew his tribulation was unique and had prepared many rare treasures. His life force was no longer as unique as it used to be. To gather such treasures again, he would have to struggle. Who knew how long that would take? This was a fast track. Not only could he eliminate Zamasu's minions, but he could also obtain the treasures for the 8th tribulation. Why not? On a larger scale, this was a threat to the northern spacetime that had to be eliminated. Lord Guangying saw his determination and said, "Are you sure you can handle it alone?" "Don't worry." Jian Wushuang nodded. He had prepared well. He would disguise his aura, and they wouldn't recognize him immediately. Then, he could deplete the resources of the Duanya spacetime, making it easier for Wuxia and others to take over. Otherwise, they couldn't handle the strong ones in the Duanya spacetime. In that case, Lord Guangying's eyes gleamed as he thought of a brilliant plan. "You should go to the Moya Mountains and create a big disturbance. Then I'll enter the core of the Duanya spacetime under the pretense of aiding them and deliver a heavy blow from behind." Hiss! Jian Wushuang felt a chill down his spine. Dozens of 8th tribulation peak powerhouses suddenly attacking the Duanya spacetime strong ones would be spectacular. He had thought Lord Guangying had mellowed over the years, but it turned out he was fiercer than Jian Wushuang himself. "By the way, inform the Realm King. Once we act, seal off the Duanya spacetime to prevent others from taking advantage of the situation." Lord Guangying mobilized the powerful beings of the northern spacetime, planning every step meticulously. This time, aside from the experts from Qishan Temple, Jian Wushuang had also informed Divine Wood King, the second in command of the ancient moon sect, who could lend a hand. For him, it was a free helper and the reward would be given by Realm King. Moreover, the Realm King had also dispatched strong individuals from Tiansong Palace to assist. With the experts from Qishan Temple, it was nearly enough. Duanya spacetime, above Moya Palace. A cold current swept across the sky, cutting through the dark mountains. This place was named Duanya spacetime for a reason. It was a cliff moved here from the realm god continent. Moya Palace, established by the Lord of Moya, was located above the cliff. Jian Wushuang transformed into the night, revealing only a pair of blue eyes. Hidden in the night sky, no one could detect his presence. Wait, after leaving Lord Guangying, he had been lurking here, waiting for the Lord's orders. He was also waiting for the army to assemble. Wuxia and Abyssal Lord, along with their men, had almost reached the upper-tier spacetimes. Divine Wood King was already in the upper-tier spacetimes and had now arrived outside Duanya spacetime, accompanied by the Blood Demon Hall Master of Tiansong Palace. This Blood Demon Hall Master was once a super-powerful being at the 8th tribulation level. Due to Jian Wushuang, he had once gone to the realm god continent. He had reached the limit of the 8th tribulation level and was preparing to break through to the 9th tribulation if not for the Realm King's mobilization. These two super beings had divine power exceeding 25 million, possibly reaching 30 million. Lord Guangying, I have arrived. Guangying. After the two arrived at the designated location, Lord Guangying in the secret chamber of the villa revealed his face through the dim light. He did not respond to the two but silently transmitted a message to Jian Wushuang. Take action. The voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Buzz. His eyes opened, and the divine power in the surrounding world was instantly absorbed by his terrifying devouring force. It shook the entire sky. Kill. With a simple word, he exuded an overwhelming sense of oppression. Moya Palace, the most powerful force in Duanya spacetime, ruling the region for countless ages. In an instant, the divine power was drained, and the weaker emperors could barely maintain themselves with their origin source. However, the universe masters with extremely strong divine power were in trouble, nearly suffocating. Fortunately, the divine power stored in the origin source universe quickly replenished their divine bodies. In just a moment, the numerous strong individuals in Moya Palace had just reacted when they saw a towering figure in the sky, already swinging a fist towards Moya Palace. Heavens! A universe master of the 5th tribulation level who had grown up in Moya Palace exclaimed in disbelief at the scene, as if in a dream. Even in his dreams, he never thought that one day a divine demon would attack Moya Palace. Boom! The divine demon's giant fist struck down on Moya Palace. The endlessly powerful formation began to crackle and snap. Even the ordinary tribulation-level beings could sense that the formation would not hold for long. This time, the high-level 8th tribulation universe masters finally reacted. Bold! Who dares? Who dares to act recklessly in Duanya spacetime? In an instant, several angry shouts erupted simultaneously. A total of 6 8th tribulation universe masters, each with divine power around 20 million. Swish! The 6 strong individuals from Moya Palace instantly appeared in the sky. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's exposed divine power was about 25 million. He frowned. The 2 guardian gods didn't come out? With such a commotion, even if it didn't draw out the Lord of Moya, it should have at least brought out the 2 guardian gods. Based on the intelligence from Lord Guangying, the 2 guardian gods were last seen returning to Duanya spacetime a few years ago. They had emerged from a super-secret realm in the upper-tier spacetimes. At that time, Lord Guangying was curious about why the 2 guardian gods had returned so suddenly. After learning that the Lord of Moya was involved with Zamasu, he speculated that they had returned to protect the Lord of Moya. Now that Jian Wushuang had caused such a commotion without drawing out the 2 guardian gods, it was likely that the Lord of Moya's tribulation site was not in Moya Palace. Or perhaps they did not think highly of him. They believed that the 6 universe masters of the 8th tribulation's level could handle him. They underestimated him greatly. Ha! Jian Wushuang transformed into a towering divine demon, battling 6 of them alone. He did not use the Wanjia sword but wielded 2 broadswords, the most suitable weapons for a divine demon. Who are you to dare attack Moya Palace? Do you know that the 3 eternal forces are allied with Moya Palace? Boom! Jian Wushuang ignored them, swinging his broadswords and relentlessly attacking the 6, like a mindless beast. He overwhelmed the universe masters, even distracting himself to destroy the formation of Moya Palace. Crack! After thousands of attacks, although they didn't land in one spot, they still shattered the formation of Moya Palace. Instantly, countless figures flew out of Moya Palace. Most of the weaker ones were taken into the pocket dimensions of the Universe Masters, leaving only the Universe Masters of 5th Tribulation's level fleeing. The Universe Masters of 8th Tribulation's level stayed behind. As the formation of Moya Palace shattered, an even more majestic divine demon stood up from within the palace. It was a formation. At least 18 Universe Masters formed it. All of them were of the 8th tribulation level. Individually, their divine power might not be significant, but combined, their divine power soared to 26 million. They were determined to stop Jian Wushuang. Still not coming out? Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. He initially thought that after breaking Moya Palace, the two guardian gods would come out no matter what. He didn't expect them to remain so calm, so he couldn't be blamed for bullying the weak. Swish! The divine demon he had transformed into instantly dissolved, and countless divine powers returned to the heavens and the earth. Jian Wushuang, clad in black armor and wearing a mask, stood proudly in the void. He reverted to his true form and lightly pointed. A blue light instantly tore through space-time, piercing the formation that had just been established. Boom! A thunderous explosion shook the heavens and the earth. The 6 universe masters of the 8th tribulation level who had previously besieged Jian Wushuang held their breath. He still hid his divine power. The divine power Jian Wushuang had just unleashed was only over 20 million. Enough to easily suppress the 6 universe masters with 20 million divine power each, but not enough to deal with the formation of the divine demon. This time, by disguising his aura and revealing his true form, he defeated the divine demon with just one finger. It's over, informed the palace master and the guardian gods. Knowing it was futile, they didn't stay to fight. They scattered and fled. Jian Wushuang's target wasn't these people, so he didn't bother with them. Instead, he waited for those hidden eyes to open. Buzz! An ancient aura emanated from above the cliff. Jian Wushuang's expression darkened. That aura did not belong to one person, but 3. 3 ancient auras erupted simultaneously. Each one had divine power exceeding 30 million. Every one of them was in the 9th tribulation. This time it was Jian Wushuang who found it hard to believe. Originally, he wondered if the Lord of Moya could even reach the 9th tribulation, but unexpectedly, even the 2 guardian gods had become universe masters in the 9th tribulation. It was difficult. How could this be? He was only slightly surprised and then immediately informed Lord Guangying. Go. No. Escape. Quick. Run. Don't worry about the others. Just leave Duanya spacetime first. Suddenly, there were 3 more universe masters in the 9th tribulation. Even the Realm King didn't know. It was evidently Zamasu's scheme. What seemed like a sure thing turned out like this. Had he known, he would have waited until he had passed the 8th tribulation before coming. Now his divine power was too strained to deal with 3 9th tribulation beings. Even at his peak state with 40 million divine power, it was still very difficult. Because he didn't know how much divine power the other party possessed. Anyone associated with Zamasu couldn't be underestimated. Upon hearing his urgent voice, Lord Guangying did not hesitate. He took a few trusted followers and directly tore through spacetime to leave Duanya spacetime. Although he didn't know what had happened, the moment that powerful threat emerged, he couldn't help but tremble. It was definitely a super strong being in the 9th tribulation. He had once witnessed the battle between Broly and Mieshang. After so many years of cultivation, he himself had reached the complete state of the 8th tribulation and could roughly sense it. The divine power contained in that aura, though not as terrifying as Broly's, was still much stronger than Jian Wushuang back then. The reason they could defeat Broly and Mieshang was due to the fusion of Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing. Otherwise, for them, those 2 threats were like an insurmountable mountain. Now, the threatening power once again invaded this spacetime. Lord Guangying didn't dare think much. He immediately sent a message to Wuxia and the other strong ones preparing to enter Duanya spacetime. Now, it depended on whether Jian Wushuang could hold on. The original 3 ancient beings, after becoming 9th tribulation beings, had left northern spacetime. It wasn't possible for them to return so easily. Now only Jian Wushuang and Hu Qing could hold them off. But Hu Qing was still in seclusion. Still at the critical moment of crossing the 9th tribulation, no one dared to disturb Hu Qing. The Realm King was the same. His northern spacetime had 3 new universe masters in the 9th tribulation, which should have been a good thing, but unexpectedly they were 3 enemies. Who are they? The Realm King clenched his fist, turning his head to look towards the end of the upper-tier spacetimes. He always felt that Zamasu's people were hiding in northern spacetime, which was why they were being plotted against repeatedly. And this time, 3 9th tribulation beings suddenly emerged. Fortunately, northern spacetime had stabilized. If they were hiding, they might still cause some damage. But now that he had discovered them, they were no longer much of a threat. Jian Wushuang couldn't handle it alone, but he could arrange for Tiansong and others to quickly return to northern spacetime. It was no longer as passive as before. Jian Wushuang, Hu Qing. The Realm King's profound eyes sparkled. These two were the future pillars of his northern spacetime. And there were also Wu Zua, Wu Tian, and Divine Wood King. All of them would grow to the ninth tribulation, or even become universe gods. At that time, he wouldn't fear Zamasu, especially Jian Wushuang. Once he reached universe god and merged with Hu Qing, that power, he could hardly imagine it. The gods would all kneel, just like when they had beaten Mieshang brutally. What if the gods merged? They would still fall. Thinking of this, Realm King clasped his hands behind his back and muttered to himself, "The secret fusion technique. I wonder if Great Realm King has it. This kind of thing should always be on hand." Unfortunately, after inquiring, his heart sank. This secret technique was only possessed by the Realm God. Only when the next Realm God appeared would another piece be added. In other words, Zamasu didn't have it either, only the current Realm God had it. Of course, since it could be created, there would naturally be one somewhere in the starry sky, but at his level as a Realm King, he couldn't reach it. Maybe he could ask Jinling. Perhaps he could get it. But that was for later. In Duanya spacetime, Jian Wushuang stood in the void, tearing off his disguise, revealing his true form. His blue hair fluttered, and the Wanjia tribulation's sword on his back hummed, ready to be unsheathed at any moment. Facing 3 ninth tribulation universe masters was indeed tricky. One sword strike might not be enough. "It's you." A voice of anger echoed from the depths of the Moya Palace. The voice was not from the Lord of Moya. Jian Wushuang had stopped disguising himself because there was no need. The strongest sword in the entire northern spacetime was with him. Once he drew his sword, he would be recognized, so why hide? Moreover, since Guangying's plan had been destroyed, he was left to face the entire Duanya spacetime alone, making concealment even less necessary. "Jian Wushuang." A robust voice came from the Moya Palace, followed by 3 streams of light breaking through the mountains and rushing out from the secret chamber. "Lord of Moya." Jian Wushuang raised his head without any panic. Facing 3 ninth tribulation masters, he had this confidence. Even after surviving the tribulation, the regular divine power of a 9th tribulation master was only about 30 million. At most 35 million. What was the concept of surpassing 40 million? It was already at the demigod threshold. Perhaps they underestimated the demigod threshold. On the Realm God continent, a demigod generally required 45 million. In the starry sky, it would be around 50 million. A universe god might need over 100 million divine power. He didn't think these 3 lackeys could be that strong. The Lord of Moya, leading the group, stared at Jian Wushuang. He didn't know much about this rising star, but he learned from Zamasu that Jian Wushuang was extraordinary, with divine power exceeding 30 million. And he was still a 7th tribulation universe master. This shocked him even more. Although his expression was cold and severe, at this moment, he didn't want to cause more trouble. Betraying the northern spacetime was for power, not for face. Even if his lair was destroyed, he could rebuild it. So, upon seeing Jian Wushuang, he forced a smile and said ambiguously, "Friend, our Moya Palace has always respected your Qishan Temple. What brings you here today?" He knew a lot about Qishan Temple, but it was out of resentment. Because of Wu Zua. Wu Zua was the disciple of the Realm King. So he hated. Why wasn't he chosen back then? If he had been chosen, he wouldn't have betrayed the northern spacetime. So he hated the Realm King, ruined his path to cultivation, hated the weakness of the northern spacetime, wished he could be reborn in another spacetime. At this time, Zamasu noticed him and made him a pawn. Jian Wushuang knew the general situation of the Lord of Moya. The story of the Lord of Moya was straightforward. Lacking mental strength, even if he became an ancient existence, he might not withstand the birth of the God of Life. He might betray the northern spacetime halfway through. Besides, the Realm King hadn't treated him badly. He had been provided with the best food and drink. Yet, in the end, he chose to betray them. He deserved to die. My enmity with you is immense. Jian Wushuang didn't hide his feelings. He pressed his hand lightly on the sword's hilt and said coldly, "Do you know Zamasu?" Hearing this name, the Lord of Moya was taken aback. Just as he was about to retort, his gaze turned cold. Whoosh! The phantom of the Realm King descended beside Jian Wushuang. That resentment filled the will of the Lord of Moya. Since that one time, he hadn't seen the Realm King again. All the treasures had been given to the Lord of Moya through Tiansong and others. Seeing him again now, they were mortal enemies. It had always been this way. If he had cut off his path of cultivation, what else could they be but mortal enemies? Moya! The Realm King's voice carried guilt as he said softly, "It's still not too late to turn back. Go to the Realm King continent. And from then on, we owe each other nothing." The Lord of Moya's eyes widened in anger, and he pointed at himself with a trembling finger, shouting, "Owe each other nothing? Who will repay my path of cultivation?" Arrogant! Jian Wushuang's gaze turned cold. "Moya, this is the chance the Realm King is giving you. If you don't seize it, today will be your death." Ha ha ha! The Lord of Moya laughed maniacally at Jian Wushuang's words. "When did it become your turn to speak, Junior? You're just a dog beside Realm King, yet you're feeling self-satisfied. You, a lower-tier creature, do you think you have the right to speak to me just because you've gained some inheritance?" Moya! Realm King was also enraged, glaring at the other. "What?" Moya was slightly surprised. "Did I say something wrong?" Back then, he was just like Jian Wushuang, staying by Realm King's side. Yet he faced that kind of choice. If he hadn't been better than Tiansong and the others back then, he would have willingly cut off his cultivation path. He even had thoughts of giving up his position after the competition ended. But he never expected Realm King to make such a choice. "Back then, I only had 3. Realm King gritted his teeth and said, "You can blame me, but this has nothing to do with the Northern Space-Time or those cultivators. I don't know why you've become like this, but you'd better not believe Zamasu's words." The Lord of Moya's body trembled slightly. After taking a deep breath, he said excitedly to the Realm King, "That's why I hate you, and I hate this world even more. But those were my choices. However, it was you who cut off my path of cultivation. Your choice. I've never believed Zamasu's words, but he can make me stronger, and that's enough." The Lord of Moya's aura began to surge, demonstrating his divine power. He then turned to Jian Wushuang, his voice icy. "Creature from the lower tiers, don't think that just because you've gained some inheritance you can disregard everything. Today, I'll show you how capable I am." Buzz! As soon as he finished speaking, the Lord of Moya raised his hand and condensed a light wave, directly piercing through the phantom of Realm King. The projection was in the void, and that void was destroyed by the Lord of Moya, causing the Realm King to disappear from Duanya spacetime. There was no need for him to come again. He just wanted to give the other a chance. Since he didn't heed the advice, everything was left to Jian Wushuang. Facing the attack from the Lord of Moya, Jian Wushuang didn't stop him. He thought that the Realm King's presence would only waste his time with unnecessary chatter. It was better to eliminate the opponent quickly. He still had to face the 8th tribulation. Finally, some peace. "If you don't make a move soon, I might have to." Jian Wushuang smiled faintly, exerting a bit of force with his arm. The azure blade was already drawn from his back. Clang! The Wuxia sword was unsheathed, and the surrounding spacetime instantly turned blue. A powerful aura filled the entire Duanya spacetime. It seemed like it might break again. The Lord of Moya was momentarily stunned. That terrifying aura made him feel dazed. 40 million divine power was just Jian Wushuang's peak divine power. But if you were to talk about his strongest means, it would still be his sword Dao. As soon as this indestructible aura emerged, the well-versed Lord of Moya instantly understood the gap. "Are you capable of fighting well or just taking a beating?" Jian Wushuang sneered, his sword shadow dancing with his body. An indescribable, stunning sword shadow erupted from the Wuxia sword tomb. "Today, I'll let you experience the 10th tribulation. Buzz. The sword shadow hummed. Space-time reincarnation. The strongest sword move. No extra display, just that simple. Form the array. The Lord of Moya roared angrily, his divine power surging to its peak. But it was only around 38 million. Even if he succeeded in overcoming the tribulation, he would only be on par with Tiansong and the others. The two guardian gods, who had just reacted, also erupted simultaneously. Their divine power was about 35 million each. The three formed an array, their divine power slightly over 40 million. Not to mention whether they had the time or not. Even if they did, they couldn't stop Jian Wushuang's strongest sword move now. The 5th sword move was his peak. As for the 6th sword move, he couldn't use it at all. Back then, when he transformed, he could barely use it. At that time, the origin source he could mobilize was immensely powerful. He was already at the level of a universe master. Now, he couldn't even reach the demigod level, he was still far from it. Of course, to deal with 3 ninth tribulation universe masters, the 6th sword move wasn't necessary. That was for slaying gods. Space-time reincarnation. First, space-time was sealed and time slowed down. The sword shadow seemed slow, but it made the opponents feel incredibly fast. So fast that they couldn't react. It was about to end. The sword shadow cut through space-time, piercing the Lord of Moya's divine body. Time then slowed down. Then came reincarnation. From death to life. Then from life to death. Poof! The Lord of Moya spat out a mouthful of brown blood, staring at Jian Wushuang in disbelief. His voice trembled as he spoke. What kind of sword technique is this? Space-time. Reincarnation. No wonder. I lost without grievance. At this moment, the Lord of Moya no longer had any bravado or resentment. Instead, he was completely relieved. This was the power of the space-time reincarnation. Some could comprehend the true meaning of life and death from this sword. Others could understand the mysteries of time and space from it. 1 sword strike, 2 lifetimes. Moya, you are a practitioner from the northern space-time. Even if you lose your origin source, you will return to the northern space-time. But because you are involved with Zamasu, your origin source will not return to the northern space-time. It will be completely obliterated by me. Moreover, your soul will shatter, and you will never be able to reincarnate. To make the other party understand the despair of betrayal, Jian Wushuang spoke each word deliberately. This was the consequence of betraying the northern space-time. In fact, the Realm King had not given such orders, but he intended to do so, to prevent future imitators. With more and more powerful beings from the northern space-time heading to the Realm God continent, it was inevitable that some would be swayed by Zamasu. Therefore, he had to make an example out of them. This incident would certainly be made public in the future. The life force within the Lord of Moya had already begun to wane, unable to last even a quarter of an hour. Hearing this outcome, his face showed no sign of distress. Instead, he laughed. Jian Wushuang thought that Moya was going to go mad. But at this moment, madness was futile. His divine body and origin source were shattered. His life force was ebbing away, and any movement might cause his soul to disperse completely. Do you think this will make me afraid? The Lord of Moya shook his head with pride. Jian Wushuang frowned, too lazy to waste words on a dying man, simply stating the cold reality. You think Zamasu will have your back? Aren't you striving to become stronger? But from now on, you will be completely annihilated, forever despised by the entire northern space-time, the first to betray it. Your people, your disciples, your sect will all be obliterated. Jian Wushuang didn't know if the other had considered these consequences. He was reminding him. The Lord of Moya, however, grew more composed. You've said it all. I will never be reborn. My soul will scatter. No matter how much you say, you can't harm me. Have you ever thought about why you did all this? Jian Wushuang, without realizing it, began to engage with a dying man, his own mindset becoming unsettled. He didn't realize that he was already falling into a trap. If Jian Wushuang thought more, he would understand. Back when he defeated Broly and killed Miashang, what a great feat it was. How could Zamasu arrange for 3/9 tribulation experts to deal with the northern spacetime? Wasn't that just sending them to their deaths? Even if they took advantage of Hu Qing's seclusion, they couldn't threaten the northern spacetime. Such an obvious insertion must have had ulterior motives. This was an open scheme, a blatantly open scheme, but Realm King and Jian Wushuang thought it was a conspiracy. The Lord of Moya, about to fall, understood everything from a single sword. He looked at Jian Wushuang with pitiful eyes, saying word by word, For the chance to make a choice. A choice. An opportunity to make a choice. He had fantasized about that chance. If one day he needed to choose a person, that person would be Realm King. He wouldn't hesitate. He wanted Realm King to understand that he had made the wrong choice back then. He was the best. Realm King chose wrongly. That opportunity was ultimately a fantasy. In reality, however, such an opportunity was indeed presented before him. Ridiculous! Jian Wushuang raised his sword, intending to end the other's life completely. Suddenly, he felt a shadow envelop his mind, making him very uncomfortable. Now, he just wanted to deal with the other party and quickly pass the tribulation. Wait! The Lord of Moya called out to Jian Wushuang, who was about to act. He looked at Jian Wushuang, and a deliberate sense of resentment and unwillingness appeared in his eyes. Because he knew Zamasu's plan was a decoy. The ultimate goal was to break Jian Wushuang's mindset. Although he had taken the other's benefits, at the moment of death, he still chose the northern spacetime. He chose Realm King. He didn't continue with what he originally planned to say, but instead showed fear and unwillingness. This gave Jian Wushuang some mental comfort. I regret it. Tears fell from the Lord of Moya's eyes as he said excitedly, Jian Wushuang, don't destroy my soul. I will tell you the ultimate secret of the northern spacetime. One even Realm King doesn't know. This statement indeed caught Jian Wushuang's attention, and his sword stopped. It wasn't because of what was said, but because the other showed a satisfied expression, and then stopped. His mindset gradually stabilized. As for the secret, he disdained it. What hadn't Jian Wushuang seen? He had been to the starry sky, seen the star spirit. Northern spacetime. What secret could the northern spacetime have? He merely enjoyed the other's expression of unwillingness and resentment. Speak well. If your words please me, I might shatter your soul and let you be reborn, giving you a chance to merge in the future. But by that time, I will probably be the god you look up to, and you will never be able to make any waves. Lord of Moya's face trembled, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. A dying man had to worry about the person who was about to kill him. The ultimate secret of northern spacetime lies at the end of the upper-tier spacetimes. You will understand everything once you go there. Also, be careful of Zamasu. Be careful of Zamas. These were the last words left by Lord of Moya. Jian Wushuang then carefully collected the origin source. He dared not devour such an origin source recklessly. As for the soul, he casually crushed it. He collected it as well. Whether it reincarnated or not was still up to him. As for the place of secrets mentioned, he scoffed. The end of the upper-tier spacetimes was where he intended to go anyway, no need for the other party to remind him. But because of this, he had to be more cautious. Phew! After perfectly killing Lord of Moya and others, he let out a long breath. For some reason, although he resolved the trouble with one sword, it brought him immense pressure. He blamed everything on Zamasu. In fact, he wasn't wrong, just a little misdirected. And very wrong in many ways. The decay accumulated over years of seclusion had harmed him. Guangying, take people and move. Lord of Moya and the two guardian gods have fallen. Leave no one related to the Moya Palace. As for the others, investigate clearly. If there's no problem, spare their lives. He didn't act too ruthlessly. The Moya Palace truly couldn't remain. Only by entering did he realize that the things Zamas gave were similar to Mieshang's and had spread to many people. It had to be eradicated. Otherwise, it would be a problem. One thing puzzled him though, why did Zamasu send 3/9 tribulation beings to deal with him? And at this particular time, northern spacetime already had 3/9 tribulation beings. Even if he failed, Hu Qing was in seclusion. He could suppress the matter and wait for Tianzong and the others to return to resolve it. He just needed to know that Duanya spacetime had 3 ninth tribulation beings. If he couldn't win, he could still escape. This was something Zamasu probably wouldn't overlook. Yet he still did it. Thus, Jian Wushuang was somewhat perplexed and couldn't understand. Without the Moya Palace, Duanya spacetime was like a chopped tree trunk, looking good but useless. Guangying personally mobilized, and 3 forces attacked Duanya spacetime. Wu Zhuo led the experts from the middle-tier Qishan Temple. Wu Tian replaced Hu Qing and led experts from the upper-tier spacetimes branch and also rushed in. Wan Shan was among them, but he had a mission at hand. After sensing Jian Wushuang's presence, he couldn't go to greet him and could only hope to end this conflict quickly. For the first 2 teams, Guangying instructed them to act with restraint. Those unrelated to the Moya Palace were spared. Those related were investigated, detained for a while, and if cleared, released. If they had issues, no need to say more. However, Divine Wood King, leading the members of the ancient moon sect, had no such scruples. Especially Divine Wood King, he only knew that someone had plotted against the northern spacetime, and Realm King had issued a kill order. In fact, it was Jian Wushuang who had told him. In the outside world, he had seen Realm King, but had noticed that his expression was somewhat grim and dared not approach to speak. So, he thought of slaughtering everyone here to help Realm King vent his anger. Therefore, he struck the hardest. As long as it was a branch of the Moya Palace, it was directly exterminated by his Moya Vine, leaving no one behind. Some families backed by the Moya Palace were left to the disciples of the ancient moon sect. Those families were not much anyway. They were all families of universe masters, with the strongest ancestor being at most a 5th tribulation. A 6th tribulation was enough to take them down. However, the disciples of the ancient moon sect, to plunder treasures more quickly, directly slaughtered everyone, took the treasures and left. Kill! In a microcosm within Duanya spacetime, slaughter was rampant. In a giant valley, more than 1,000 universe masters were fighting. This place was a famous secret realm in Duanya spacetime. Later, it was acquired by a powerful 7th tribulation and transformed into his own microcosm. Families and sects cultivated here. But because one of the family's younger generation was a disciple of the Moya Palace branch, it attracted the slaughter. Leading them was a universe master of the ancient moon sect, at the peak of the 7th tribulation. He held a blood-stained giant blade, dragging the blade as he slowly walked up the blood-stained steps, saying coldly, "Leave no one alive." Yes, several 6th tribulation universe masters behind him also joined the slaughter. And that 7th tribulation master holding the giant blade came to an old man's side. "Shangguan Xiong, weren't you quite impressive in the eternal realm of Tianzong last time?" Xue Dao. The old man named Shangguan Xiong was no match for Xue Dao now. His origin source had already been shattered by an 8th tribulation universe master. Xue Dao was here to finish things up. To say finishing up was actually to gather some treasures and clean up the traitors. I can die, but give them a chance to live. Shangguan Xiong, once a proud figure in the world, had lost his spirit. But facing the fall of his family's younger generation one by one, even as a 7th tribulation universe master, he wept, willing to fall himself to save his family's younger generation. This was his accumulation over several eras. The family's prosperity. But just because of a slight connection with the Moya Palace, they were to be cleaned up. Old thing, stop struggling. This time the heavens want you dead. Do you understand? Xue Dao sneered. Those were the orders he received. The heavens wanted the Moya Palace gone. Even the 3 ninth tribulation universe masters fell within a quarter of an hour. Now, no one could protect the cultivators associated with the Moya Palace. Xue Dao. Shangguan Xiong mustered his last bit of strength to shout. He wanted to self-destruct, but a cold blade had already pierced his chest. Splurt. The cold blade sliced through Shangguan Xiong's chest. You? Shangguan Xiong gripped the blade lodged in his chest, his eyes bulging. Behind him lay a little girl, dressed in white, lying in a pool of blood, her eyes filled with fear and tears. A moment ago, this place was as warm as a picture. Now it had become a sea of blood. Everything felt like a dream. "Grandpa!" The little girl called out to Xianxia from the cold ground. Before Xianxia could turn his head, the blood-stained blade was abruptly pulled out of his chest. Thud! Xianxia completely lost consciousness, but his final glance was at the little girl. He understood that today his family, sect, and disciples would all be annihilated. When the heavens decree death, who can resist? Well, there's still one left. Xue Dao looked at the little girl with a playful gaze. The blade was already aimed at the little girl. Just as he was about to strike, a blue aura blocked the blade. A tremendous force snapped the blade, forcing Xue Dao to step back several paces. A figure shrouded in blue slowly descended. The figure glanced coolly at the scene in the valley and couldn't help but sigh. "Who are you?" Xue Dao quickly stood up, knowing he was no match, and began to announce his identity. "I am an emissary of the ancient moon sect. Shut up!" The figure in the blue aura roared. The figure was none other than Jian Wushuang. He had traversed Duanya spacetime and seen too many scenes like this. But what could he do? Not kill? Yet the things left behind by Zamas had already infiltrated the origin source of many. Kill? But it involved too much. Compassion was not something he should have. But seeing it, he found it hard to remain indifferent. Xue Dao was also intimidated by Jian Wushuang's words and didn't dare speak again. However, he had already transmitted a message to the accompanying 8th Tribulation Universe Master. Upon hearing the figure in the blue aura, the 8th Tribulation Universe Master immediately recognized him as Jian Wushuang. The Divine Wood King had mentioned him to them before. When Jian Wushuang made a move in the primordial black heaven, many had witnessed it. Hearing it was Jian Wushuang, Xue Dao felt even more aggrieved. Wasn't this Jian Wushuang's order? Why stop him now? Jian Wushuang's order was simply to eliminate hidden dangers. The Shangguan family, was it a hidden danger? Perhaps he didn't think so, but his subordinates didn't see it that way. Better to kill 10,000 than to let one escape. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. Knowing he couldn't stop it, he enveloped the little girl in his aura and instantly vanished from the valley, leaving behind a stunned Xue Dao, uncertain whether to continue or stop. After hesitating for a long time, he eventually waved his hand and left the valley with his men, taking all the cultivators beyond the celestial immortal level with him. Even if Jian Wushuang intervened, the necessary actions had to be taken. Otherwise, what would this mean? Jian Wushuang himself might still be conflicted. He glanced at the unconscious little girl and casually tossed her into a blessed land in Duanya spacetime, a paradise without cultivators. Annihilating a spacetime still left this last bit of kindness. It was only after leaving Duanya spacetime that Jian Wushuang exhaled a long breath. Jian Wushuang. Lord Guangying sensed his aura and immediately approached. He directed the strong from 3 sides to enter Duanya spacetime but did not enter himself. Seeing Jian Wushuang emerge, his eyes held respect. This time, Jian Wushuang had taken down 3 9th Tribulation Universe Masters, which shocked him no less than the Jian Wushuang of old. Jian Wushuang was momentarily stunned before looking at Lord Guangying, calmly saying, "You've worked hard this time, but the aftermath. You don't need to worry about the aftermath. We owe it all to you this time." Lord Guangying replied courteously, "Without you, we wouldn't have taken down Duanya spacetime, let alone protected ourselves." Jian Wushuang sighed. "It's nothing. By the way, what are your plans next?" Lord Guangying asked. Next, after this event, Qixin Temple had firmly established its footing in the upper-tier spacetimes. With the conquest of Duanya spacetime, Qixin Temple only needed a little more development to seamlessly annex Fallen Soul spacetime. Out of the 9 great spacetimes, taking 2 was significant. Once Huiqing successfully underwent his tribulation and reached the 9th tribulation, they could even establish an eternal realm. By then, it might be time to leave. Huiqing was pursuing the resurrection of Jiang Shang's soul, while Jian Wushuang sought even greater strength in his path. There were also some powerful opponents to contend with. I plan to head to the upper tier's endpoint and then start my tribulation. Hearing the mention of tribulation, Lord Guangying recalled that Jian Wushuang was still in the 7th tribulation realm. It was indeed time for him to undergo the 8th tribulation. Some of his peers were already preparing for the 9th tribulation. Although Jian Wushuang's pace seemed slow, no one doubted his strength. This is something Realm King asked me to give you. He also instructed that you contact him after you successfully undergo the tribulation. Lord Guangying handed a mustard seed to Jian Wushuang. Taking the mustard seed, Jian Wushuang didn't need to think to know that it contained treasures prepared for his tribulation. He had come here for treasures, but now that he had obtained them, his mood was somewhat dampened. It was unclear whether it was due to the fall of the Lord of Moya or the hellish scenes he witnessed in Duanya spacetime. After a brief recovery, Jian Wushuang bid farewell to Lord Guangying. At this moment, Divine Wood King also sent a message, inviting him to enter Duanya spacetime to divide the treasures. Jian Wushuang declined with a smile, leaving the task to Wu Zhua and others. With a single movement, he headed towards the ultimate point of the upper tier. Passing through ancient moon spacetime, he sensed a familiar presence. Li Shang. Back then, the head of the Li family of Yu Kingdom had established a connection with Jian Wushuang in the boundless universe. After leaving the boundless universe and finding his family destroyed, Li Shang had gone mad for a time. However, his strength remained, and after regaining his human form, he didn't rebuild his family, but instead founded a Taoist temple, becoming a Taoist ancestor at the 7th tribulation level. The Empress had similarly reached the peak of the 7th tribulation, and Queen Yunji had advanced to the 8th tribulation. These familiar presences were merely swept away by his senses. Old grievances had long since ended, and there was no need for further meetings. They all had their own fortunes and paths to follow, which had diverged significantly. Naturally, there was no need to meet, and doing so would only be awkward. Jian Wushuang's figure trembled as he completely left the 9 great spacetimes, heading into the desolate land in search of the abyss or the cliff waterfall above it. The cliff there was part of the same mountain range as the one in Duanya spacetime. This was something he had just learned. The abyss, like the abyss in the lower reaches, it was filled with endless terror and was bottomless. It wasn't the kind constructed by the Realm King God which had a bottom. Passing through the desolation, he reached the ultimate point. Northern spacetime, upper, middle, and lower tiers. The ultimate land of countless universes. Life had begun to stand here, time had started here, and space had extended from this place. Jian Wushuang stood in the void, gazing at the cliff. The cliff had black water flowing down, cascading into the abyss below. The huge sound was deafening. Rewind. Jian Wushuang forcefully tore through spacetime to perform a temporal rewind. He wanted to see what had happened here in the past. He had done this many times with the universe. At first, there was no sound. The water flowing down the cliff was not black but clear. However, at a certain point in time, a black-robed figure appeared on the cliff. He stepped lightly into the water, and his flesh began to disintegrate. Then his divine body cracked, his origin source collapsed, and his soul shattered until he completely transformed into black river water that flowed into the abyss. Life in northern spacetime began to flourish. Cultivators emerged. Jian Wushuang watched in disbelief. They truly had a creator. A black-robed figure? Who was he? Realm King had never mentioned this, the creator of northern spacetime. Is he Realm King? Clearly not. It should be the Realm King God. The rewind continued until it reached a point just before Jian Wushuang arrived. He stopped because before he came, there was a figure in the water. Splash! Jian Wushuang smoothed out spacetime and instantly drew his sword. Come out! He shouted at the water surface. What's the point of hiding? Come out and fight me. The water's surface was turbulent, and his voice was drowned within it, receiving no response for a long time. Yet, when time was rewound, he clearly saw that figure in the water wearing a mask. There couldn't be a mistake. For such a long time, there had been no appearance. But just before he arrived here, a face was revealed. There was definitely a problem. It might very well be another of Zamasu's tricks. This time, after slaying the Lord of Moya, he felt something was off. Moreover, Realm King also believed that the frequent crises in northern spacetime were because Zamasu had spies there. Otherwise, how could Jian Wushuang encounter trouble right after exiting seclusion? He had been in seclusion for such a long time without any mishap. The most crucial revival secret technique went smoothly. Raising the life level of the spacetime also went very smoothly. Jian Wushuang's emergence from seclusion wasn't on any significant day, yet he encountered the traitor, the Lord of Moya. Either Jian Wushuang was a harbinger of disaster, or Zamasu had unspeakable secrets in northern spacetime. The latter seemed more accurate. Amid the flowing water, a pair of eyes stared at Jian Wushuang, completely blending with the water, making it impossible for Jian Wushuang to notice. Hee, I'm discovered. A strange voice, as if speaking to someone. Before long, it indeed attracted a cold voice. This voice was very familiar to Jian Wushuang. It was Zamasu. Humph, losing northern spacetime is nothing, but the human race must die. Let's first give them some hope. If this time we couldn't shake his Tao heart, then get ready to face the opponents on the Realm God continent. The figure in the water paused and said in surprise, "It's already certain that you will become the Realm King. Acting against cultivators at this time, I fear? I'm not that foolish, and he isn't worth my effort. Someone else will deal with him. By the way, you can gather your true form and come with me. There's no need to stay in northern spacetime anymore." Whoosh! The figure in the water felt a surge of emotion. He could finally leave this damned place. Zamasu had arranged for him to wait here for countless years, and today was his liberation. Realm God Continent. Your king has returned. The figure in the water slowly condensed. A burly body instantly formed. Buzz! A powerful force directly pushed Jian Wushuang back 10,000 miles from the water's edge. Staring at the stout, well-built man with smooth and distinct lines, Jian Wushuang was surprised and exclaimed, "Frost Demon Clan?" He looked very similar to the ancient temple and ancient warriors he had once slain. But the opponent's power was too overwhelming. Jian Wushuang couldn't even sense the opponent's presence. "Boy, remember my name. Once you arrive at the Realm King continent, it will be very interesting." The stout man sneered and, before the surrounding spacetime could condense, he leapt into the abyss along the river. Splash! A figure emerged from the water once more. This time, Jian Wushuang recognized the person. Zamasu. Indeed, it was Zamasu's hidden hand at play here. But what intrigued him was Zamasu's mention of the Realm King continent. The power of the Frost Demon Clan member was far superior to his own. If the demon had wanted to make a move, Jian Wushuang would have been doomed, but the demon chose to leave instead. "Jian Wushuang, aren't you curious why he didn't attack you just now?" Zamasu spoke with his hands behind his back, his tone arrogant. The way he spoke made Jian Wushuang very uncomfortable. He didn't respond directly but stared coldly at Zamasu. The surrounding spacetime completely froze, and the figure of the Realm King was also transmitted to the scene. "That person just now, was it cuter?" As soon as the Realm King descended, he spoke in surprise. The presence just now was too familiar. It was the former king of the Realm King continent. A super strong universe god. Originally thought to have fallen, it turned out he was hiding in the northern spacetime. Zamasu, seeing the Realm King's arrival, sneered, "Just a reminder. I am about to enter the starry sky for the Realm King God's trial. During my absence, you need to find an opponent for your northern spacetime." Cuter. Jian Wushuang didn't know who the opponent was. He only knew the person was from the Frost Demon Clan. Realm King God's trial? The Realm King's expression was very unpleasant. He hadn't expected Zamasu to grow so quickly, already reaching the point of participating in the Realm King God's trial. Once the trial was successful, he would become a probationary Realm King God, and at that time he would truly be the second strongest on the Realm King continent. That's right. Zamasu casually opened a space-time passage and, before entering the tunnel, reminded, "When I return, there will no longer be 4 major spacetimes. After speaking, he disappeared into the northern spacetime. This time, he might never return to the northern spacetime because the coordinates of the northern spacetime were with Cuter, who had already returned to the Realm King continent. Zamasu had also lost the coordinates, making it impossible to find the northern spacetime unless he became a Realm King god. After Zamasu left, the Realm King's face was silent, his gaze somewhat dazed. However, many doubts arose in Jian Wushuang's heart, such as the identity of that Frost Demon clan member. The Realm King, knowing the other party's identity, showed great fear. Now that Zamasu had left, shouldn't it bring peace? Jian Wushuang. Realm King glanced at Jian Wushuang, feeling a bit guilty. He felt guilty towards all the practitioners who traveled from the northern spacetime to the Realm King continent, because inadvertently he had caused them a lot of trouble. Lord Realm King. Jian Wushuang looked unaware, though he understood in his heart. They hadn't even reached the Realm King continent yet, and they had already made quite a few enemies. Going there would be dangerous, but he was never afraid of such things. Without danger, where would opportunities come from? A strong person doesn't come from timidity. They crawl out from death. So there was nothing to fear. He knew what Realm King was going to say and immediately interrupted him, saying, Lord Realm King, no need to say more. Why not explain Zamasu's words to me, and about that Ice Demon clan member? When Zamasu left, he mentioned attending the Realm King God's trial and that Cuter claimed to be the king of the Realm King continent. It sounded impressive. The power he had just shown was also very strong. It was better to understand the opponent first. Moreover, it seemed that Zamasu's target was not the northern spacetime, but the 4 major spacetimes. Clearing the 4 major spacetimes? In Jian Wushuang's view, weren't the 4 major spacetimes the subsidiary spacetimes of the starry sky? They could maintain the starry sky. The Realm King, hearing this, smiled bitterly and said awkwardly, Jian Wushuang, you overestimate me and the subsidiary spacetimes. Without the 4 major spacetimes, the starry sky would still be the starry sky. Couldn't even affect the Realm King continent. Otherwise, Zamasu's several arrangements in the northern spacetime would have long provoked the wrath of the starry sky. But in these few times, no one had paid attention. Back then, Miashang threatened the northern spacetime, and it was only because he violated the supreme rule that his identity was erased. As for the northern spacetime, in the eyes of the gods of the starry sky, it was not that important. Or rather, life was not that important. The 4 major spacetime rivers were originally subsidiary. Lives and such could regenerate. When Weiss came, it wasn't because of the safety of the northern spacetime but because of the heavenly maiden. Later, he stayed because of Jian Wushuang. This was also why the Realm King reacted so strongly when he saw Jinling. Because such a super character as Jinling wouldn't care about any subsidiary spacetimes. Being able to go to the Realm King continent was a great favor to the Realm King god. Moreover, the so-called subsidiary spacetimes weren't used to stabilize the starry sky but to suppress the myriad worlds. A glimmer of light appeared on the Realm King's heavy face. Jian Wushuang, the 4 major rivers surround the starry sky, connected to each other. What about the other places? This question really stumped Jian Wushuang. Worldview. His worldview had changed many times. He used to think the spacetime rivers were already very powerful. Looking up at the starry sky, that was his heaven. But now the Realm King's question made it clear it wasn't that simple. He shook his head and listened attentively. Realm King smiled faintly, walked to the riverbank, sat cross-legged, and gestured for Jian Wushuang to sit opposite him. Seeing the posture, Jian Wushuang felt it wasn't simple. He also sat down and took out tea, pouring some for the Realm King. After sipping the tea lightly, the Realm King began to speak. We can all see the starry sky. Beyond the starry sky is the spacetime river. Above the river lies the Realm King continent. Around the continent, there are uncharted infinite lands. There is no Tao there, but Tao exists everywhere. For instance, with a casual punch, you can open a path of fists. With a casual sword stroke, it's a sword path. You can even open a world of swords. It's 100,000 times simpler than within the space-time. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was startled. 100,000 times simpler than cultivating in the spacetime. In an instant, he thought of the place he had once visited in the starry sky. The primitive world. Infinite lands. Opening a path casually. It depended on whether you had the strength. As long as you had ambition, you could become a super-existence. Back then, seeing that ancient primitive person, he thought of the ultimate. So there was the extreme starry sky, because what he could see was the starry sky. So he took the starry sky as the end point. Could it be that the place I visited back then wasn't the starry sky, but the infinite lands? Jian Wushuang's eyebrows twitched, revealing a look of shock. Realm King did not mind. He assumed Jian Wushuang was astonished, which was normal. Everyone reacted this way the first time they heard about it. He continued, "Think about it, cultivation has no end. Yet it is extremely simple. What would appear in the infinite lands? Invincibility." Jian Wushuang stood up abruptly. Without rules to bind them, invincibility was inevitable. As long as one continued to cultivate and with an infinite number of cultivators, an invincible being would eventually emerge. The infinite lands, Jian Wushuang exclaimed. It's indeed a place of invincibility. If everyone went to the infinite lands to cultivate, wouldn't the overall strength increase infinitely? But then, thinking it over, since the Realm King had said so, there should be no one who would willingly go there to cultivate. Realm King explained, "If it were as you said, it would be a bad thing. A world without rules is a terrifying place. That's why the four great spacetimes exist, to isolate external time and space. Whether there is life in the four great spacetimes does not matter. This is also where Zamasu's confidence lies." "I see." Jian Wushuang slowly sat back down, realizing he had oversimplified the situation. A place like that, once truly opened, might not be a good thing for the starry sky. The four spacetimes surrounding the starry sky were meant to isolate the infinite lands. It was quite interesting, isolating time and space. This way, no one could leave, thus forming an inner circle and outer square. Places with rules were round, and places without rules were boundless. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang thought of the master of the starry sky. The starry sky had a master. So where did this being who opened up the starry sky come from? The infinite lands? As soon as he thought this, a massive buzzing noise appeared in his mind, like a punishment for blaspheming a god. Buzz! His consciousness in his mind seemed to explode, and Jian Wushuang quickly held his head, trying to clear his mind. The Realm King saw this and was not surprised, smiling faintly. "Haha! It seems you've fallen into the trap. Haven't you heard a saying during your mundane days? What? 3 feet above your head. There is a god." Slap! Jian Wushuang slapped his head and said, gasping for breath, "I thought I had reached the level of slaying gods. The being who opened the starry sky is not a god. Those he appoints are gods, and the divine positions are decided by him. Who do you think is more powerful?" Realm King smiled and said, "The reason I'm telling you this is to make you understand that there is always someone better and you must not slack off. As for the matters of the infinite lands, don't think about it. When you make a name for yourself on the Realm God continent, you will know more." Telling Jian Wushuang now was indeed somewhat unnecessary. He was only a universe master of the 7th tribulation, not even having ventured out of spacetime. It was indeed unnecessary to concern himself with the infinite lands. At least he had to become a universe god before he could think about it. The infinite lands was the nightmare of the entire starry sky. How vast was the starry sky? To Jian Wushuang it was like the sky, the greatest. But to the Realm King the starry sky was too small. Compared to the infinite lands it was very small. Furthermore, the threat was even greater. Without the protection of the 4 spacetime rivers, the wars outside the starry sky might have lasted for endless years. The reason why the 4 great spacetimes could sustain life was due to the great Realm King's efforts. This was to enable proactive attacks in the future and to explore the origins of cultivation, or rather, the origins of life in infinite lands. The god of life in the northern spacetime was Danbao, which even Jian Wushuang knew. The Realm King knew who the god of life in the starry sky was. It wasn't a secret. But where did the life in infinite lands come from? Who created it? Everyone was pursuing this secret. This time, Jian Wushuang had truly gained insight. In an instant, he seemed to see his own fate. Searching and seeking. The secret of infinite lands? The nurturing of teacher Xianxia? Shaking his head, he decided to stop thinking about it. Turning to Realm King, he wearily said, "Let's talk about something lighter. I see you are very afraid of a certain frost demon called Cuter. Is he really that powerful?" "I'm not sure. But don't underestimate Cuter. You may have only heard of infinite lands, but Cuter is an enemy you will have to face. He was once the king of the Realm King continent and held considerable power in the starry sky. He offended the Realm King God and was suppressed. Later, he disappeared, and I thought the Realm King God had killed him, but it turns out he switched allegiance to Zamasu." The Realm King's expression changed when he spoke of Cuter. In those days, Cuter's era oppressed the gods of the Realm King continent to the point where they couldn't lift their heads. He was indeed a king. If it weren't for the Realm King God, no one would have been able to rise. The only one who could compete with him was the Great Realm King. Even the Great Realm King wasn't his match at that time, as you can imagine. After listening, Jian Wushuang remained calm and said, "As long as the strength is reasonable, there's nothing to fear. After I pass the 8th tribulation, I will head to the Realm King continent." "So soon?" The Realm King worriedly asked. "When you reach the 8th tribulation, how much divine power will you have? Will you even be a demigod? Why not wait until you pass the 9th tribulation and go to the Realm King continent with Hu Qing, so you can look out for each other? As for the limit of the northern spacetime, you don't need to listen to Tiansong and the others. I can open a micro-world for you to practice in, and there will be plenty of treasures." Jian Wushuang didn't expect the Realm King to care so much about him, saying so much that he felt a bit embarrassed. Practicing in a small world with plenty of treasures. He had imagined such a life before, but now it was no longer necessary. Without the time for battle, life would be dull. Endless eons had made him lose much. He didn't want to live that endless, monotonous time anymore. It was still the repeated battles that made him grow faster. "Thank you for your kindness, Realm King, but I would rather enter the Realm King continent as soon as possible." Jian Wushuang shook his head and refused. After hearing what the Realm King said about infinite lands, he was even more eager to learn the secrets of the starry sky. Entering the starry sky to meet the gods. He had imagined that scene. Perhaps teacher Xianxia was there. Realm King, knowing Jian Wushuang's character, didn't persuade him further. Instead, he solemnly handed over some treasures, saying, "You are the pride of the northern spacetime, as are Hu Qing and Wu Zua. I will always support you. Before you enter the Realm King continent, at least raise your basic divine power to 30 million. Otherwise, it's too dangerous. Isn't Shi Lu that strong?" Jian Wushuang scratched his head and continued. "Although Cuter is powerful, he's a big figure. He wouldn't target an 8th tribulation from the northern spacetime. It's not that exaggerated. Better to be safe than sorry." Realm King just handed over the treasures to Jian Wushuang, though what he really wanted to say was that once they reached the Realm King continent, he could no longer protect them.